It's the most wonderful time of the year. For Ryan, that is. Because
Not
it's
for
his
you.
second favorite time of the year, minus the holidays. It is
Ahead of the holidays, if I'm being honest.
ahead of the holidays. Ho
I'm
ho!
Jewish. Hanukkah doesn't mean squat to me. I don't know what to tell you.
So, Ryan, you created a Fringe show about your love of Fringe. But
That sounds like that's probably been done and probably wasn't very good.
there you go.
What are we doing today, Mac?
Well, Ryan, today we are back at it again. It is time for the Cup Annual Fringe Roundup Reviews, where myself, Ryan, and Jill will all be together over several episodes because we've seen, Ryan, what's the number we kind of ended up at?
Don't
Roughly?
know. Don't know. Close to 40, maybe even 45. I don't know.
Woo!
We'll find out at the end. This is part one.
For now, let's say 45. I like that. It sounds nice and grand.
It might not be correct.
Okay, 40, 45 shows roughly. Now we're covering over 3 episodes. There'll be...
We hope 3. Let's hope it's not more.
We can do 3. We can do 3.
Oh, we can definitely do 3. I hope it's not 4.
Yes, let's hope it's not 4, but I think we can get done in 3. I think we got enough gumption in us. But that being said, this is the first of 3. Each one of these will feature myself and Ryan for part 1. Then it'll be Ryan and Jill in part 3, and all 3 of us in part 2.
Don't hold us to that order, but
don't hold us to that order. But there'll
some
be
variation
one episode of Ryan and Jill, one episode of Ryan and Mac, and then one episode of the trio.
Yes.
But either way, we're doing Fringe 2025, and we got around 15 shows to get through in part 1. So we're going to jump right on into this. But before we do, Ryan, what's in your cup? Do you have anything exciting today?
I have a very sweaty glass of water because I don't have air conditioning in my apartment. How about you, Mac? What's in your cup?
Well, I do have air conditioning in my condo, and I am drinking some diet grapefruit 7-Up in the cup because it is too hot for tea.
I'm glad someone is representing the cup. I have this glass.
You got 2, maybe 3 more episodes to cover with the cup.
I suppose.
What do you say we dive in to this wonderful Fringe festival? And we're starting off with one that, Ryan, you and I both saw, not at the same night, but 2 separate evenings. It's one you actually recommended to me when I had an open spot in my schedule. And this is The Ensemble by Perchance Productions. R&M, yep, right here. Yep, see, big bonus points already in my notes that they actually had a program.
You are easy to please, good sir.
Well, on certain things, yes. Trust me, I do know when shows have a program, or at least, or at least they get half marks for a QR code.
Well,
it leads me to a program.
This show could not get away with not having a program because the program makes an appearance in the show itself.
That's right, and there's a bald man on it. They're always bald.
So they say.
Yes, that's right. So, Ryan, give us a little elevator pitch on what this show was and what kind of your thoughts were on it.
All right, we're trying to go through these quickly. So,
once again, the elevator pitch. We'll try not to do too many plot spoiler things here. It's more just general idea. What was it?
Like for the most part, we are releasing this after the festival has ended, so it's not even a matter of spoilers. That's the big issue. It's more just we got a lot to get through. So the Ensemble is basically a show, very meta, very Pirandellian, about what if the leading players of a grand historical epic drama do not show up, and the ensemble cast is required to figure out what they're going to do in the absence of these leads. And we have a big wacky cast of characters like 3 Capuchin monks, the page, the guards, conspirator number 9, who knows where the other 8 of them went.
The 2 ladies.
The 2 ladies, yes, and we could go on, but we have
Jack the Townsman.
True, yeah, Prisoner 3, I think it was.
No,
Prisoner
9?
3.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Conspirator 9, Prisoner 3.
Conspirator 9, Prisoner 3, that's right.
Yeah, so anyway, we could keep naming them, but the idea is that all of these basically unnamed or mostly unnamed, nobody numbered characters are left to fend for themselves, and what do they get up to? Over the course of it, it becomes this weird sort of mind games, meta theatricality of like, what even is the performance? And because they quickly realize that they are indeed in a play that has been scripted by this bald man, who is Jose Sanchez Sinistera. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Again, apologies with all pronunciations of all names over the course of this very long recording. They realize that even though it seems like they have broken the narrative and broken free from the narrative, they find pages of script and everything they're saying seems to be scripted, and it raises questions about free will and predeterminism and what does it mean to be a supporting player in this world, and do we have the freedom to make the story about ourselves when it decidedly is not? How's that for an
Yes.
elevator pitch of the story?
I thought that was perfect, Ryan.
All
In
right.
under 2 minutes as well. Very well
Ooh,
done.
good job. Okay, what were your general thoughts about the show?
General thoughts. I thought the cast had great chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, though, standout goes to the page played by Mila Tricelio.
Sorry, where do you see the program doesn't specify who's who?
Cast under cast in order
Hmm.
of appearance.
How do we know who's the order? Do you have very
Because
good
the
notes
characters
on?
also show an order of appearance too. So the
All
two
right.
guards are first, and then the page is third.
That's good triangulation. Okay, good job,
I
Mila,
tried.
as the page.
Yes. But yes, Mila, I thought, as this kind of page who always wants to know everything and nobody tells them anything, and they're tap dancing, and then they're the ones that really fit the provocateurs, because at one point they start doing the play without, the lead actors, and then she, as the page, decides to once again start the whole existential crisis
Mhm.
again by breaking out of the play to do her own monologue, or
Mhm.
Shakespearean monologue as it was,
Yeah.
to shake it up. So she did a great job standing out amongst a crowd of great performers who all had great chemistry. Like, I could go down the list of all of them and highlight a
Yeah.
moment for each of them. That was
Yeah,
really
they were all great.
those three monks,
Mhm.
scene stealers through and through, and the
Oh,
impressiveness of them talking
yes.
together all the time
Do
was so well done.
do you know how much bad speaking in unison I have seen at fringe festivals? And these three are incredible. Like
It was scarily good. Like, even when
and
you're leaving the theater, they were still doing it.
and the fact that the characters themselves are like startled at how good and how impossible
Yeah.
to break out of it, like that is a
Yeah.
skill that those
Yeah.
three monks, chef's kiss, brilliant.
Nothing beats when they're asking for the names of them outside the monk things, and you get to the throw and they just go, oh, realize that they can't get out of this loop. It's great. Ryan, you know me, I'm not a big fan of absurdist, like, out
Mhm.
there Brechtian theater, but this I could get beyond, because it kind of reminded me of the parking garage episode in Seinfeld, where the characters are trapped and they just keep going in circles and just keep spiraling about being trapped in a parking garage and not getting out. This was the same type of situation where it's like, no matter what, they can't escape. No matter how hard they try, they're just stuck in this ever expanding parking garage. These characters are stuck in this ever expanding abyss of theater that they just can't leave and come back. It's just great. Like, it hooked me from the beginning, with two guards on stage trying to, like, wait for the cue and trying to talk to each other without, like, noticing each other. It kind of reminded me of the death of Stalin, when it's the
Mhm.
funeral for Stalin, and Steve Buscemi turns to, I forget what the actor he has to turn to, but basically he turns to him and goes, "We need to switch spots. We can't switch. We're standing guard. Hit sidestep, make it look ceremonial."
Yeah.
Like, just the humor of this was very existential, very broad, very kind of Mel Brooksian comedy in a way too.
Mhm.
I thought it had a really fun vibe. I think it went on. I think it dragged on a bit.
I,
I felt there's maybe one too many endings and one too many times of, we're stuck in this play that just keeps going.
yeah, I think
That I feel like maybe could have trimmed a little bit in there, but that's not the cast. That's the source material they're working with or adapting from, because this is apparently
yeah.
adapted from another play.
I
Um,
think for me, I get what you're saying about that. The reason why it didn't bother me is because every time that it felt like, oh, we might be approaching the end, it kind of kept reinventing itself in an interesting way. That there was always sort of a new twist, a new wrinkle, a new way that they further feel
right.
themselves confined. I loved the fake out intermission. That was really fun.
That got me for a minute there.
Yeah.
I started doing the
Is it over? It might
yeah.
be. Like, this is the kind of play that
It
felt
does
like
feel
it
like a
could have been.
natural spot, like, stopping
Yeah,
point.
yeah, and I've seen a lot of, like, again, bad fake out intermissions or fake out roll credits show over, but like, no, this it was sort of just like the best possible version of each of these gags that maybe you've seen
Yes.
before, maybe feel trite or contrived in other contexts, but here it just really worked. This is like a really good show. Big shout out to the director, Christelle Bartolese. Apologies again about pronunciations. So we have this little caption here: there are no small parts, only cowards. That's fun.
Ah,
Yes.
very good.
Yeah. Any last thoughts about the show, or
No, I really enjoyed it. I thought
as
it
did
was
I?
I thought it was a very well done piece, and I thought it was a very great recommendation, Ryan.
Oh, happy to help.
Now, speaking of recommendations, our next show we're talking about is one that you have already written and published about over at Next, and you gave it several. I think it was 4 N's out of 5 or something like
I
that.
gave it 5 out of 5. You
Love
counted
it.
incorrectly for this show about arithmetic. Yes.
Aha!
Aha.
There we go. Well, speaking of arithmetic, it is none other than The Adding Machine by Leroy Street Theater. Ryan, give us the rundown. why did the show earn 5 N's out of 5 over at Next for you?
So the adding machine, this is a 102-year-old play by the American expressionist playwright Elmer Rice. It's the kind of play that if your book purchasing habits are anything like mine, you probably have a copy or two of it on your shelf that you've totally been meaning to read at some point. Maybe one that stands on its own, maybe one that's in an anthology of plays from the historical avant-garde, but one of these days you're going to read it, and that day never seems to come. But hey, they're doing it at a Fringe. This feels like a good opportunity to see this show that has a reputation as being this touchstone of this expressionist movement, and specifically a uniquely American example of it. So what the play basically is this guy by the name of Mr. Zero. He's this schlubby little nobody. He's henpecked by his wife. He has this kind of dead-end job at the store that he's had for 25 years where he adds things, all of the kind of values of purchases. He just, somebody reads them aloud
He's
to
been
him.
like a Leo Bloom.
Okay, I'm not going to touch that for a moment, but he's basically Gregor Samsa from Kafka's Metamorphosis, if you want to use a producer
Good
reference.
Yep.
He has this basically kind of like absurd, endless job, but he's been doing it for 25 years, and he's pretty sure he's distinguished himself, and he's going to get a raise, and his wife would love for him to get a raise. And instead of a raise, he gets fired because they have replaced him with an adding machine. But is the machine the thing that's replacing him, or is he the machine you see? And how is he being dehumanized by this labor? On the surface, that just sounds like okay, yeah, we have like a kind of maybe death of a salesman type situation where the guy who's been a company man his whole life gets put out of his job and has to search for purpose. But then things get really weird. And you know what? This is a 100-year-old play, and the run is over by the time. So I'm going to spoil it. He kills his boss. And he faces trial, and he goes to jail, and his wife visits him in jail, and just there's this constant sort of verve of nonchalanceness about what's going on, about like picking his last meal, and just like everything is just like a silly, unimportant conversation despite the literal life and death stakes of what's going on here. Then things sort of get off the rails while he's awaiting death row. A zookeeper kind of shows people him like he's an animal in captivity. And then he gets executed and he goes on to the other side. And the whole second half of the play takes place in the afterlife, where he goes through all kinds of various adventures, meets different people. One of his coworkers who he was kind of maybe sort of in love with, it's sort of hard to tell. Emotions are sort of strange in this world. Also dies soon after, and they meet together. The intensity of the metaphysical stakes and grandeur, and yet the disaffection that the characters keep having to it. Anyway, this plot description probably isn't doing it 5N justice.
But I'm interested.
It's fascinating. And what I love about this production, which is directed by Alice Lundy, which she co-adapted the script with Toronto theater legend Guillermo Verdecchia, they've really found some kind of like beating heart in this piece where I don't really feel like they've changed that much. Granted, I haven't read the original script, but it feels very preserved authentically, like an artifact from this era. But they've just sort of shown how much freshness there is to this concept, to this piece. And I don't really feel like they've finessed a lot of what I imagine are like the more problematic things in it. There is like a lot of sort of casual misogyny that befits the period, but they kind of lean into the period setting in a way that kind of makes it work. And you don't really feel uncomfortable by it. You feel like, oh, we are groaning along with them about it. Plays from this period are so weird in a way that I feel like if somebody had written this today, it would have gotten dramaturged to death and would no longer resemble anything like this. But the fact that we're able to sort of present it as this artifact allows a preservation of that weirdness. And the weirdness is what's so interesting about it. And like the cast in particular is so incredible. There are is it 5 or 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. They're all so good. They really like master these funny New York accents. They really like play off this like nonchalance so perfectly. Tim Walker plays our lead. Earlier this year, I saw him in the show Truck that was done at Factory Theater, which was also about grappling with the dehumanizing effects of automated labor. So that's kind of interesting to see him once again showing up in this type of role, although very different sort of role in that regard.
Yeah.
He has, his wife character was played by Jen McEwen. She was really great. The almost sort of mistress character, Danny Zimmer, was really funny.
Was it spoken in like old Englishy text, or is the text modernized to like a 21st
Well,
century
there's
modern language?
it's period affect, but not old English by any like this. Like they're talking like New York from the Bronx. You silly guy over here, like that's
Oh, okay, okay.
like
So like kind
yes,
of Catskills,
yeah,
like mid 1950s
yeah, yeah. Well,
style, but
20s,
it's not like
yeah.
medieval, like Greek and Roman, like
No, there's not. No. So
old.
this one character who our hero meets in the afterlife, played by Jamar Adams Thompson, who you might remember from Tyson's Song. This character speaks in this very ethereal way where he's like, it's such an incredible performance that this guy does in here. And like, I like, if you feel like, oh yeah, I know the way this guy acts, I saw him in Tyson's Song, like this is a complete 180. He's like really a stunning presence in this, where he talks like I can't do the impression very well, but like the way he talks is like somebody who has not just seen a ghost, but is a ghost and like completely like divorced from all material reality. It's like something you kind of just have to see to believe. Brianna Dillon is also in this. She plays various other spiritual guide characters at various points. We've seen her in a number of shows as well. The Huns, you might recall. Neil here, as you often say. Everyone in this cast is so incredible. The lighting design is really good. Chin Palapane did the lighting design, also stage manager of this production. Keeps this like very interesting high contrast expressionism, especially as we go through these different metaphysical planes. There's like a scene very early on where like he's walking slow motion through the world under these like very like dark blue lights. They do a lot with a little. Like this show is one of the unconventional venues. The space they're in, Puppy Sphere it's called, is actually like by day it's a doggy yoga studio, which I didn't even know that existed. There's no dogs present in this production, but it's just basically like an empty studio space that they were able to convert to theater at nighttime for this Fringe festival. I said this in the review, like the closest thing to a gripe that I have about it is that the sightlines aren't always great because it's not a purpose-built theater. So I was in the second row and I feel like there were a lot of scenes where I had to like really like lean over, bend forward to kind of see what was going on. I would encourage, if the show's done by the time you're seeing this, but yes, try to get there early to get a spot in the front row and you will miss nothing. Don't fear any audience participation because there's like
Ryan, you normally don't like the front row, so that's saying something if you're saying go for the front row.
Well, I don't like the front row because I don't necessarily want to get sucked into audience participation, but there's like one moment in this where like I think they hand a character in the front row, just one individual person, like a wallet or an item or something, and then take it back very soon after. That's the extent of it. But you don't have to worry about getting sucked into that kind of thing here. Everything about this is just like the most stunning version of itself. I left it thinking like, wow, yeah, that was really good. 4 out of 5. And then as I was writing the review, I'm like, no, I think I have to roll it up to 5. Like, I think there is a bit of, with like, I don't love the star rating, N rating scale that we have to use there. I think it sort of like reduces the complexity of a show and our reactions to it to this like numerical score that projects a sense of objectivity that doesn't really exist. But when you're kind of thinking about like, okay, the whole scope of Fringe, maybe you grade on a bit of a curve in a context like that. Maybe if I had seen this show in a different context, it wouldn't necessarily ascend to those same heights. But in the context of Fringe, this is as good as Fringe can be, I think.
Interesting.
And it's the kind of thing that we often think of Fringe as this like incubator where people can try out new ideas. But something I do love about Fringe is people also take weird old stuff like this, like the Ensemble that we just talked about, and say that, you know, it's not impossible that a theater could program this in its regular season, but only in Fringe could you kind of get this like very down in the dirt, scrappy version of it that is just like so well preserved, keeps it as the oddity, this artifact that it is, but also finds so much new freshness, new life in it. We're having a real moment, I said this in the review too, that about plays where people go on a rampage at work because they're ill-treated, and this fits very well into that tradition and yet anticipated it by 100 years. I think this play has found its moment, and it's wild that it can be so old and feel so fresh at the same time. 5 out of 5. You counted correctly.
Wonderful. Yeah. I mean, I wish I had time to see it because you like caught my interest there. So
hopefully they will bring it back at some point. This Leroy
I'm
Street
sure
Theater,
some theater company can pick it up. I mean,
they have a gem here for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Perfect. Well, Ryan, on to your next piece that you're going to talk about,
which is
the Rhinoceros Collective by Almost Entertainment. So what is that?
All right. Story time. So those who watched our Fringe Roundup last year or read some of the coverage that I did in Intermission's fleet of reviewers for Fringe last year might recall a show that was in last year's Fringe called Unfurnished, I think it was, which was a large cast farce put on by a quite young company of, I believe, current or recently graduated U of T students. And it was, I'm not going to mince words, I thought that show was a bit of a mess. That it wanted to be this farce, but it really felt like sketch comedy. And that's was kind of my big takeaway from it. And I said a version of this in probably both of the reviews that I did at the time, but that they interpreted the genre of farce as, oh yeah, chaos. That's what makes something farce. But what I think farces do really well is they give the illusion of chaos, but build towards an ending that reveals the careful hand of a thoughtful author who's pulling all these threads in various directions.
Noise is off. Prime example.
Very good. Noise is off, a farce about farces. Like, it understands it to a T.
Yes.
Unfurnished was a show that, like, okay, I see no coherent tissue. This isn't building towards anything. It's just a bunch of stuff happening. And it's all these like wacky characters who are all trying to be the funny guy and trying to steal the scene. And they get like a moment that feels like an isolated sketch that doesn't affect the whole at all. I'm like, I think I would have liked this a lot more if they were just doing sketch comedy. Why pretend it needs to be a farce? Why even give it a plot? Just take each of these wacky individual characters and scenes and do a sketch show. So to my pleasant surprise, when I was going through the Fringe program this year, I saw that the Rhinoceros Collective, a show being put on by basically the same artist, much smaller cast, but it's a cast of 6, all of whom I think were in Unfurnished, are doing this show called the Rhinoceros Collective, which is a sketch comedy review. So I'm not saying I'm going to take credit for giving them this idea that they should be doing sketch instead, but boy, was I happy.
You should.
Whether or not they even read or listened to my reviews doesn't even matter. But I'm like, good, they're leaning into their skill set.
Yeah.
I have to see this, if nothing else, as penance for giving them these not very good reviews at the time. But because, like, okay, now that I have given the suggestion that this is what they should be doing, I need to see them doing this.
Right.
What is the Rhinoceros Collective? It's a sketch show. 6 members from that ensemble that put on Unfurnished. It's a step in the right direction for their comedic talents, is what I will say. I still don't think it's great, but they are funny. They are very funny people. I want to preface everything I'm about to say with that. It's interesting. The whole show, at least when I saw it, and I don't believe this is improvisational or like on a bit of like of a rotation wheel. If it is and somebody saw a different version of it from what I'm about to describe, please tell me, because I think that's interesting. But it's broken up into 3 sections. The first one is sketches about cavemen and cave people. Second one is sketches about chess. And the third one is sketches about the Illuminati. And they don't like have like framing or scene titles or anything. They just like go from sketch to sketch to sketch to sketch. And for like the whole first chunk of it that you're watching, you're like, oh, I think this might just be a sketch show about cavemen and like just all the funny ideas they could have thought of for what's sketch comedy about cavemen. Like, okay, that's kind of funny. I almost wish the show was like marketed as caveman sketch comedy. And like they could have like really like leaned into that, because I don't know what the Rhinoceros Collective is. There's a bit of an interesting dramatic tradition with the concept of rhinoceros. I think of the absurdist play The Rhinoceros by Eugene Ionesco as like this, okay, rhinoceros equals absurdity. There's also the political party, the Rhinoceros Party, which feels like a satire thing. So maybe leaning into that kind of absurd. I don't know what a rhinoceros is, but I thought it was like, okay, there's a lot of like interesting sketches here about just like they brainstormed a bunch of ideas about funny caveman stuff. The opening sketch, which I'll just spoil here because whatever, this is all after the fact anyway, is a caveman game show called Wheel. That's it. No, of fortune, just wheel, because they just invented the wheel, you see, and it's fun to spin it. So they have this big caveman looking wheel where the 3 contestants are like, what would you like to do? I'd like to spin the wheel. And they spin it, and it just keeps going and doesn't land on anything particular. And then like, hey, like, hey, that's kind of funny. That's a funny idea for what a caveman game show would be like. And then there's another.
They would totally be impressed by the wheel.
Yeah, exactly. I won't like describe every single sketch that they do here, but as it like keeps doing caveman sketch after caveman sketch, you're like, oh, okay. It's weird that they didn't like lean into this is just the caveman sketch comedy show. And like it's weird. They didn't like.
Did they dress like cavemen?
No, and that's the weird thing. They're just kind of like normal people themselves.
Oh.
They don't do like grunty caveman voice like what you expect. They're just like normal people behaving like cavemen and doing cavemen stuff. And then, like, after like a good well over a third of the show of just every sketch one after another being about cavemen, suddenly they just decide that now it's about chess, and it's just one sketch after another that's about the game of chess. Which, sure, that's
Listen,
with like,
chess is a lot of fun.
yeah, like there's yeah, the first one of the chess sequence was funny. It was like a speed dating thing, but they're playing chess with each other, and like
Okay,
it was kind of funny. Like there was
that's
some
got good
funny,
premise.
yeah. That's the thing. A lot of this had really good premises. I feel like so many of these individual sketches kind of like ended before they got to what you feel like is the funny thing that it's building towards. Which like
Oh,
they almost felt like there's a punchline coming, but they end the sketch before you get there, or like you playing like armchair dramaturg off to the side, or just like, oh man, there's like a good joke I thought of that they could have put in here that seems like
mhm.
a missed opportunity. I thought that's where it was going, but and I'm like, okay, but it's sort of just like rapid fire. We're moving on to the next thing, and it's on the theme. And then like the third section is all about the Illuminati, and that's like, yeah, there's I think why I say this is a step in the right direction is because these are funny people and they have a lot of funny ideas and funny ways of performing. What I think the next step that they need to do is they should team up with or hire a seasoned improv or sketch person, someone from
The
Second
team from
City.
Monks.
Well, maybe that I was thinking more just like someone like from Second City or Bad Dog, like just a
Yeah,
seasoned
okay.
sketch comedy person who can be a director dramaturg for them, because that's what I think they need.
Mm,
This very much has the vibe of friends getting together, throwing stuff at the wall and just like trying it, and that's fun. There is like a charming energy to that, but
yeah.
there's a lack of tightness that I think you could
Mm.
really
Comedy's
use.
got to be tight. Comedy can't
Yeah,
wander.
and
Good
and
comedy is tight. Mel Brooks is known for his precision timing, and that's because he's actually a natural born drummer. Like that's like he has a
mhm,
natural built-in rhythm that he could like. He never played the drums before, but he picked up drumsticks one day and was able to figure out the beat and was able to be like a natural drummer in the Catskills
yeah,
before he got into comedy writing. But
yeah,
the rhythm and the tightness of comedy is key. And there's another show you and I both saw that we will talk about the tightness of comedy because
sure.
that one
Yeah.
definitely had a really good tight succinctness to it.
And like rhythm is certainly one thing, and I am kind of like touching on that too, but also just like a matter of I feel like I don't know what the development process for this show was, but I get the sense I would love to ask the creators how many premises for sketches did you pitch and even start workshopping and then cut from the show? And I would bet that it's not a lot. It
Mm,
really feels like every idea they had made it into this show. And again, there's a charm to that. There's a lack of refinement. Like,
mm,
just because you had an idea that is about cavemen doesn't mean that it's like the best idea you can have about cavemen, or that every
right.
sketch kind of just felt like they got into the rehearsal room. Okay, I have an idea for a sketch. This is two cavemen talking about how some of the fish are sprouting legs and going to come onto land. And then they just played out that scene and, like,
Yeah.
okay, I think we got that scene. Okay, it's in the show. Like, it didn't really feel
Right.
like there was a lot of, yeah, dramaturgy, a lot of outside eyeing, a lot of refinement,
Hmm.
for lack of better word, which is why I think again, they're on the right track. They've learned to let's not try to do something as precise as a farce. We can just be silly with our sketches. But they need, I would say, some sort of comedic sketch comedy expertise to really be that professionalism, that outside eye that is able to tell them what's working, what's not.
Right.
And I would love to once again be proven wrong, I guess, or maybe proven right. I don't know how this works.
Well, clearly you're invested in their growth as a company.
I am. And like, hell, you know what? If you guys want to hire me, Rhinoceros Collective, to like, I don't claim to have the kind of expertise in sketch that I am suggesting you could probably get from someone better from one of these established companies. But like, I'm a dramaturg. I know it's funny. If you want to hire me to
He is a
workshop your
funny
next show,
guy.
with you, and I won't review it on here if I'm working on it. But like, I feel like I see a lot of potential here, and I would love to see the next sharpened version of what you have to offer.
Love that. Okay. Well, next one by moi. It is The Iron Mask by Breakaway Entertainment. And once again, right off the top, points for having a program. Now, mind you, they did not give any of their cast last names.
Really?
So,
That's odd.
yes, right? So, that is one area where I was a bit disheartened. Thank goodness their Instagram is well documented, so I was able to find names where needed. But yes, this is a piece that is an adaptation of Alexander Dumas' very famous follow-up to his Three Musketeers novella, The Man in the Iron Mask. And this time it's adapted and set in 1920s Toronto, where jazz and bootleg liquor flow like an untamed river.
Is that
It's
their
a
press
Prohibition era
quote, or is that you?
musical, is what they dubbed it, but
Okay.
I would not dub it a musical. I would
Oh,
dub this a dance piece
interesting. Yeah.
because they, as you can see here, show order. They do list several songs. It is a jukebox style piece where you're getting songs from Celine Dion, Michael Bublé, Gingerbread Man by Dirty Honkers, Uninvited by Alanis Morissette. So you get a lot of
That's
different songs,
yeah.
and there's two cast members who play the narrators of the piece,
Mhm.
who are singing the songs, and the rest of the cast doesn't speak, but they dance
Mhm.
the entire piece. So it's kind of like Transcendence, but with added people singing parts versus just having audio.
What if I could add to this? This is the same company that last year did scenes from an Italian restaurant at Fringe, which I
Right.
saw you didn't,
I did
and
not see
that.
that.
But that was also like a very dance-heavy jukebox musical
Mhm.
with the music of Billy Joel and Elton John as like the main
Right.
underscoring. So at least that kind of like created a narrative and sort of
Yes.
cohesion through line. The track list that you just named, I'm like, okay, I'm having trouble sort of seeing like what is the through line between all these pieces, especially if you're like saying jazz and jazziness is the kind of thing that like
Well, see, so this is the other thing.
yeah.
So listen, I thought this piece, the dancing was incredible. I would love to see a lot of these dancers team up with Transcendence and join their crew, because some of the dancers in this piece were outstanding. Like you have the actress who played Perry, who's kind of like our evil Leonardo DiCaprio character, like evil King Louis, played by Doriana. And so the precision and the tightness of that piece, of her solos, was just incredible to watch. And then her twin, played played by Emily. They looked so much alike that at first I did think it was still Doriana in the mask, just playing dual roles. Like she had just swapped dance slips and was doing both roles. It wasn't until they both were on stage at the same time that I went, oh, wait a minute. Wow, the casting was really well done on this to
Nice.
pull this off. So very well done. But that being said, like I said, I wouldn't qualify this as a musical. I would qualify this more as a dance piece. But that being said, the dancing was great. I will say Anibal Ortega, who was one of our narrators, has an incredible singing voice.
Yeah, it's also
They,
in scenes from an Italian restaurant.
yeah, like blasted, like just belted their hearts out in this piece. The ending, I think they got a little bit too heavy-handed with the message.
Hmm.
I understood what they were saying. I got the message. And then they kind of went like, do you get it? Like,
Hmm.
let's have another monologue here. Or let's further express the same, more of the story again. Where like, for me, like, I would just kind of go, we got it the first time. Subtlety would be okay here.
Mind if I ask what this message was?
Basically, the message was kind of along the lines of, how do I put it? Like, basically, like, are we all meant to follow the narrative? Should we break out of the narrative? Like, who's the man in the mask type thing there? Are we all men in the mask? You know,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Metaphorically speaking.
Metaphorically speaking,
Gotcha.
metaphorically speaking.
I know. It's a line
Because
from the
there's
movie
the
The
whole
Mask.
thing of, they break out the man, or I guess the woman in the iron mask, and have her take the place of her sibling, because they look so much alike. But it's like, really, you really aren't living your life. You're living somebody else's life.
I see.
So, so yeah, I mean, once again, the dancing was incredible. I think the story could have been turned up just a bit, in the sense that we didn't need the additional monologue at the end to hammer home the point. They do enough with the dialogue they do have to tell the story. I thought all the song choices they did have continued to propel the story forward. So as a jukebox musical, I thought they did a very good job of propelling the piece forward using that particular source material in very creative ways. So I thoroughly had a fun time watching the dancing. I don't know if why they needed to identify this was set in Toronto when they didn't really play much of a part. The whole Toronto aspect, they could have just said 1920s Prohibition era, and it would have been just fine.
Right.
Identifying it as Toronto just kind of felt like, hey, we're in Toronto, so we might as well say we're in Toronto. Like,
Hello, Toronto.
Bingo. I don't know if Toronto has a huge history with Prohibition and kind of
Hmm.
where we were with that, because if I remember my history correctly, we were giving like boating liquor over to the US who was having prohibition. And like one of my many Joe Kennedy biographies is that he had connections with some Canadians who were able to get him some liquor during that era of time when prohibition was reigning in the US. And he was able to, solicit some sales that way. That being said, I mean, once again, the dance of this piece was the standout. Go see this company for the dance. Like, this is where they really shine, and I would love to see Transcendence do like a collab with them, because I think they're on the same path. Like, I easily could see Transcendence doing an adaptation of Man in the Iron Mask as like a piece for them to do, especially in the venue where they normally are, where it's got the 3 levels in the basement. Like, you could easily do a really cool Transcendence collab with them for the Iron Mask adaptation. So I think this company has a lot of potential. And you liked the Billy Joel show last year, if I remember correctly, from the review, Ryan.
It was nice. Yeah.
Clearly this company is on the up and up. They're back 2 years in a row now at Fringe, and they're both producing very interesting work. So I would just say, great on you. Keep it up.
All right. Nice.
Yeah. All right. Back to you, Ryan, with the Zucchini Club.
Hey.
With the Alexander Mantia.
Yeah, Alexander Mantia is just the name of the guy, the creator, the puppeteer, but he's also listed as the company here. Yeah, this is a solo puppet show. One man, many puppets.
Kind of like
Ronnie Burkett.
Yes.
Ronnie Burkett is credited in this show as with help by. So this is. So I interviewed Ronnie Burkett for a piece that I wrote for Intermission last year when he was doing his show Wonderful Joe. And at the time he told me part of his, his paying it forward to the next generation of puppeteers, he often invites young up-and-coming puppeteers into his studio. They help him with tasks, and he sort of helps them hone their craft. And he gives them access to his thousands of books on puppetry. And I have a feeling that this Alexander Mantia is one of those types of proteges, and that the special help that he gets from Ronnie Burkett is that type of mentoring capacity. But this is very much that style of puppetry. Now, it's not marionettes like Burkett is most famous for. These are hand puppets, but it's done in like a very Punch and Judy setup in this booth where we have this little sort of like fairground setup where you gather around and see the puppet show. This is done in the Tarragon Theatre extra space.
Okay.
But it's a very small stage setup of what we
actually
see. The
solo room upstairs, right?
No, the extra space, the one off to the side.
Oh, okay.
They don't have the main space at Tarragon this year, so this is like the larger space, but they really zoom in to this one little tinier stage that he has invented here, where the guy is behind the curtain and he's showing us all these wacky, wholesome characters. The main thrust of the story is that we have a lovable Italian farmer by the name of Pasquale Provolone. And and he is a bit of an Italian stereotype, but in like a fun way. And I assume Alexander Mantia himself is Italian by the sound of his name, but I could be wrong about that, and apologies. This cute little Italian man has a garden, and his prized possession is this giant zucchini that he's been growing, which he has named Bella. And he is very worried that Bella is going to get disturbed and eaten by all of the mischievous animals that exist in this garden and around
those
garden.
dastardly rabbits.
And he has a very funny wife named Maria who gets into sort of shenanigans with him. But over the course of the play, Pasquale is trusting us, the audience, to watch Bella and make sure nothing happens to Bella every time he has to go off stage. And every time he goes off stage, one of those pesky animals shows up and does their puppet shtick. So we have this whole hilarious cast of these beautifully crafted animal puppets who each like kind of come on, and some of them want to disturb Bella, some just want to do their thing. But we have this sort of constant flow of like, what's the funny animal going to do this time? We have a silly possum, we have a blue jay, we have a magician.
What was your favorite animal?
My favorite animal, I'm looking through my notes here, was probably the squirrel, who is a stand-up comedian named Milton Squirrel, like Milton Berle, haha. Although it was less of a Milton Berle impression and more of a Rodney Dangerfield impression, because he's like, his hand, the puppet hand was like sewed to his tie, so he's like constantly like tugging on his tie, like Rodney Dangerfield. He like literally
can't believe I'm losing to a rug.
Exactly. Yeah, so that was probably my favorite. There's a lot of them. There was the guard dog, which like exists in like the little doghouse on stage that's supposed to be watching Bella. The guard dog refuses to be a guard dog. He's an avant-garde dog, and he comes on and he's like a beat poet, and he does like fun sort of like poetry, and in the end he's the one who actually disturbs Bella and takes a big bite out when he was the one who's supposed to be watching, and it's a whole thing. But it's really about this just like very charming lesson about kindness and letting go of traditions from the past to focus on the needs from today. And eventually, Pasquale learns that there's more important things in his life than the zucchini that he was prizing
I
above
beg
all
to
else.
differ.
No, what? You beg to differ? You think he should love a zucchini more than his wife? Is that what you're saying, Mac?
No, not that
Okay.
far.
All
But
right.
but mind you, we should take pride in our vegetables and fruits that we grow. You should have seen the day my dad, he spent all summer growing his corn on the cob in his home garden. He got home the day he was going to pick it, only to find the squirrels, those little bastards,
Yeah.
had gone in and
Got no
destroyed.
respect.
Right. Had gone in and destroyed his entire stock, 3 stalks of corn that he had been growing. Every ear had bites taken out of it. He was destroyed. He's never grown corn on the cob again.
Okay, so fine. Your dad doesn't have to learn the very wholesome message about caring more about people than objects. But it's very fun. Like there's a line near the end about how like, wow, we saw a lot of fun things today. We even saw an old man change his mind, so that's pretty magical. Like it's funny and it's very cute. It's wholesome, and I just have to say, like Alexander Mantilla, this puppeteer, is one just a master craftsman that he made all of these beautiful handcrafted puppets. He manipulates them so perfectly, like really just like using his hand. There's one part where a puppet becomes naked and you see just like his hand underneath, but like the fact that he's able to do so much control with just like these 3 fingers is startlingly impressive. And you know what, he's just like actually an excellent actor. The way that he not only differentiates these different puppets with their different voices and personalities, but like is able to make them emote without us even seeing him. He is behind and he is just like controlling them with his hands, and there is a lot of genuine richness and emotional texture that he's bringing to this. It is actually like very stunning and on like a level that I would say is similar to what Burkett himself does, to whatever extent that Burkett was involved in this production or if it's just like in a mentorship capacity. But like this guy is the real deal. He's a puppeteer that you should really be keeping your eyes out for, because I think that he's going to be doing some really interesting things. And even if he just keeps bringing back this lovable cast of characters, the same way that Burkett himself does with like his Daisy Theater troupe from shows as early as Tinka's New Dress and have kind of continued onward into today through various things like the Little Dickens that we saw, and that we're actually going to get Little Willie at Can Stage this season, which is the same thing but with Shakespeare. I would love to see more of Alexander's work as a puppeteer, but I would also just love to see more Zucchini Club. This is a great cast of characters that I would just relish in seeing so many more iterations of what they could have to offer. New stories, new adventures, new lessons. I think it's great.
Love that. All right. And back to you again, Ryan, with another fun installment by you, which is Waiting for Coffee, The Purple Stage.
Okay. So this is an interesting one, Waiting for Coffee. Last Fringe, in part 1 of our roundup, Jill reviewed a show by the same Purple Stage company that was called Mind the Umbrellas. So you weren't on, that was the episode of the roundup that you weren't on, because it was the one that Jill and I did together. And I didn't get to see that show, but Jill saw it, called Mind the Umbrellas. And what this company does at Purple Stage is they devise pieces with adults who have neurodiversity and complex neurological diseases. And they basically give them a platform to put on a show, tell an interesting story. And I think this show specifically, and this was the same deal with last year, they have not made this show eligible for reviewers because they don't think like it's a very difficult type of show to capture, to hold to any kind of like traditional standards of reviewing, of dramaturgy. And last year, before we realized that they hadn't opened it up, Jill just wanted to see it. So we requested, as we do with every show, and they were enthusiastic to having us review it in this format, to the point where this year they reached out to us again. So we are probably quite literally going to be the only review for this show. And I do want to, I hold that carefully. Like I want to think about how do you appraise a show like this? The basic thrust of the plot is that we have 2 main characters who are waiting for coffee, thus the title. They kind of just sit around. It's sort of like pitched as like a bit of a Waiting for Godot type parody that is, just about the idea of waiting and what are we waiting for and how do we feel the weight of time. And over the course of it, we have like these 2 other characters who come on, and they're like the waiters, like not the waiting waiters, but like they're the ones offering the coffee, bring the coffee. And it's just this interesting meditation on waiting. And what does it mean? And over the course of it, it is just peppered with these like very stunning musical and choreographic interludes that are just like visually striking images. There's like one or actually like several where they have this big plastic tarp that kind of like goes over and it's sort of like dance like in that way. There's just a lot of I could keep going on like about each individual episode, but it's very unconventional, but in a way that like you probably have never seen anything like this before, but you can kind of see just like the beating heart of these artists who in many other contexts would not even be given the opportunities to be artists or to put on shows in their own way, are just given this very broad canvas to just try stuff and shape it and make something very unique that's very much from them. And I think my takeaway watching this, which really did touch me in a lot of ways, of just like, wow, this is genuinely beautiful, is that so much of mainstream art and theater is inherently judged by what we would call able normative standards of quality. And I think like this show, to try to like judge it by like, oh yeah, like compared to like other things you see in a Fringe or other things, like on one hand misses the point, because like the whole point is that we are creating this canvas for people who don't necessarily fit into that mold of artistic standards or excellence to create something that's their own. And yet at the same time, they also create something that is like excellent, like in its own way. And like it doesn't infantilize them in any way. It doesn't like be like, oh, good job, you made something. Like it allows them to take themselves seriously as artists and invites the audience to do the same. And when you can kind of put aside your preconceptions about what you think this show is or what it should be, like it's genuinely very lovely. And like there is just like such a I'm trying to think of like the right words here, but like there's a passion that sort of derives from it. Like this doesn't feel like it's like oh yeah, we got to make a Fringe show, make some money. Like this is like, these are people who are like really like here for the love of it. And like the way that this kind of like breaks them out of their day to day, like I don't really like think or want to like necessarily box it into like an art therapy kind of like label, because it is just, I feel like, and maybe like I don't know, like this Purple Carrot company, which is like Purple Stage is an offshoot of, is like they have their blurb here. So the Purple Stage is a professional theater company for neurodiverse artists with complex disabilities. In 2018, the company grew out of Purple Carrot's drama studio community. Purple Carrots offers inclusive, accessible, arts-based programs for individuals with disabilities and diverse neurological and physical disabilities, built to foster creativity, self-awareness, and social skills. You can check out their summer camps now. So like maybe there is like,
amazing.
Like this is like an excellent program that exists. And I just, the thing that I'm really leaving it is that like I saw art that like you would really be unlikely to see in any other context. And it's not in just like this, oh, good for them doing something fun way, that like they are taken seriously and showing us what they can do in a way that is neither like fetishizing their difference in this way, but also shows us what we're missing when we don't allow artists like this to have their time on stage.
Right.
I just like, it's just deeply moving, just truly lovely work. And I encourage people, if this company does other shows at future Fringes, to really check them out, because you're unlikely to see anything like it.
Yeah. I mean, Ryan, you know, for me, like I spent summers working with kids with special needs. I wear my wristbands, still stay in contact with several campers. And I will say, like running the drama program there, they are some of the most creatively minded people that you will ever meet. And it is a joy to be in a rehearsal room with them as they come up with their plays and their skits, because the unbridled joy of just being able to explore and be creative is something so magical and beautiful, that you're right, that more people should be out there experiencing that, because that is the joy of art. Art is an inclusive community that allows everybody from every walk of life a chance to get up on stage or work backstage and be part of that artistic community that brings joy and art to the masses. So I'm definitely adding this company onto my list for next year. Should they have a chance to perform at the Fringe.
And I just want to say, because I haven't like named the specific artists,
Mhm.
but I've praised their work. They deserve to have their names out. So the show
Mhm.
itself is written and directed by an artist named Starlight. The
Mhm.
dramaturg is Eliza Martin, and the four-person cast consisted of Devin Harrington, Kyle Leung, Robin Chase, and Steph Crothers. Excellent work
Amazing.
from every single one of them.
Snaps to all of you. All right. And it's back to me for my installment, which is Broken Telefono by King Black Box. And the company is Dead Marcini Teatro. And this is a piece that serves me right away just by the description of this, which is basically it's a Spanglish comedy where it meets stage adapted telenovela that dives into friendship, emotional misfires, and the trials and tribulations of modern day dating. And as someone who's currently out in the modern day dating world after a 10-year gap, this piece and the drugs and druthers that you get put through on the dating apps and trying to find and connect with people.
Sorry, did you say drugs? Drugs
Yes,
and druther? Wait,
yes, drugs and druthers.
what is that? Is that like
Just
a,
uh,
a
just the wear and
pharmaceutical
tear of
thing?
being out there.
Oh,
Like you're gonna
okay.
meet some some riffraff. You're not gonna match with some good people. There's one person today where I just went, how did the algorithm pair us as what is it in their profile when I have very clear parameters set that somehow this person
Oh,
made it into
that's
my recommended list and really nothing there checked the boxes for what I was looking for in
okay.
a partner. So,
You don't have
you
to
know,
swipe on anyone you don't like.
that's right. That's true. That's
Yeah.
true. Just sometimes the algorithm is like, where are we going with this? But this
Mhm.
was my first Fringe show of this year, and it got me off to a really great start. This piece was written by Brian Quintaro, and it was directed by Deanna Aguilar. And the cast is stellar. It includes Adriana Vasquez, Daniela Donier, Alejandra Zapko, and Andreas Aurelio. And all of them together had terrific chemistry where they are just firing on all cylinders. They're interacting with each other really fast. They're going in and out of English and Spanish really quickly. And just like when I watched the recent West Side Story revival that Spielberg did, and they chose to have the sharks speak in Spanish because they would, just in that same way where the sharks speak in Spanish and they didn't subtitle it. Same thing here. Like there are times where these characters will go on a almost entirely Spanish monologue, and you get everything they're saying. Like, there's one point where the older sister Raquel is recounting her experience dealing with these horrible neighbors that are always banging because they make a little bit too much noise, and just her rant about them. I didn't understand everything she was saying because I don't speak Spanish, but I totally understood the meaning and what was going on there. It was great. And so I had such a great time. There were lots of great twists and turns where you thought that this was going to go one way, but then went another way. Like at one point, they flash back to the parents of these two sisters meeting for the first time, and what that like kind of meet cute was. And so then I was like, oh, okay, so now we're going to kind of have like this flashback love story telenovela thing, and they're gonna kind of like commentate on it. But that was only one scene, and then went back to the rest of dating in modern day situations. And so the only thing I kind of ding them on, well, there's two. One is they did not have a program. The QR code on.
Okay, that's that's not a ding. That's something you would have preferred, but don't hold that against
Well,
the
once
show
again,
itself.
like so once again, I scanned the poster because they had a QR code there, and it said the QR code had expired.
Okay, yeah, it's fine. That is a bad technical faux pas, but I
That
wouldn't
is a
hold it
ding.
against I wouldn't
I
hold it
mean,
against the artwork itself.
yes. I still gave it 8 M's out of 10. So,
Okay, what was the other one?
the other one was that the male character was kind of written very two-dimensional, douchey dating app boy who kind of sleeps with all the women in the show at one point or another, and he's an asshole, which is like, that's fine. There are those men
Yeah.
out there in the world. I just would love a bit more dimension because all other characters had really great dimension added to them. That this was the one character where I went, I feel we could have done a bit more to develop him a bit. Like, but the twist when you realize that they've all been dating the same guy, great twist. Great twist of the show. Thoroughly enjoyed that moment. It was very well done. And once again, the chemistry of this cast is what really sold the show. We're watching them all interact. Like, I was so invested in this friendship and the sisterhood that was on stage between these three women. I thought it was so well done that I had such a great time. I was laughing throughout. I mean, I came on a night where there was a lot of family members in the cast as well, so they were obviously very energetic, very giving to the actors and actresses on stage. And so that was just so great to be in that room for that. So I just had such a fantastic time watching this piece that I thoroughly would love to see it picked up and done again somewhere. Like, it kind of reminded me of a bit of like Jane the Virgin. Did you ever watch that show, Ryan?
I've never watched it, but I know the basic shtick, yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of like that level of comedy there where it's like telenovela. We're going to stop one minute and narrate something. Then we're going to jump back into the story again. Like, I was kind of, once again, kind of parodying, but not parodying, but kind of doing a stage adaptation of a telenovela situation there. So I thought it knew what it was. It played well. Only thing I think is they need a program. so
And develop the guy a bit more.
And develop the guy more. Once again, that's
at least like an artistic gripe. The program is, yeah.
It's an artistic gripe, but even then, like, now that I even think more about it, it's like if you're doing a telenovela where sometimes the characters are kind of two-dimensional, evil guy, good guy, evil, boss at work, like stock character types. He was a stock character, bad guy on dating apps character, and he fit the mold, and that was very well done. And I thoroughly enjoyed my time out watching this piece. Like, I didn't realize how fast the time went by that we got to the end, and I went, wait a minute, is there more? Like, I'm so down for more scenes of just these three women interacting and going out on the dating scene together.
Did you feel like the plot was complete, or was it?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Hanging?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Once again, they tied it all back together to this one bad guy on the dating app that they've all interacted with. But I totally would have seen a second act where they all go out together and try speed dating and just see what happens to them.
Maybe over a game of chess.
Like over a game of chess. There you go. I love it. I give it a full on kudos and well done. All right, back over to you, Ryan, for another piece that's $3 bracket money by Shanice Stanislaus. Thank you, Shanice Stanislaus and Rachel Resnick.
Okay.
So, what is this piece, Ryan?
$, money. Is
it? Please tell me there's some ABBA in this show.
Not that I recall, but did I miss that? Maybe. I don't know. So you might recall a couple years ago, we both saw a show called Mail Ordered at the Fringe, which also featured, it was created by Shanice Stanislaus. She was Lila, the mail order bride, who asked the audience if they would like to buy her. Yes. And then it became like the audience interaction improv.
That's right. Yes. Okay, I remember this piece now. Yes.
So this is a bold follow-up project by the same artist, Shanice Stanislaus, now teaming up with a fellow clown, Rachel Resnick. Okay. This is one of the three pieces that prior to Fringe, I published an article that I was highlighting the plethora of clown offerings that we have at Fringe.
And you
this
had
year.
a very sneaky Sondheim quote in there, sir.
I did, yes, send in the clowns. Haha, you see, because they're clowns. So this is one of the three pieces that the first of the ones we're reviewing here that I profiled in that article. So I did have a chance to talk to both of these wonderful artists who created this prior to the show. What it basically is it has a lot in common with Mail Order in terms of that it is a heavily audience interactive clown show where the people on stage need to get money from the people in the audience, which is a very similar pitch to what we have in Mail Order. But instead of this idea of the mail ordered spouse industrial complex and exploitation and that kind of thing, there's a lot simpler, lighter pitch here is that the two of them were going to make a Netflix show, but they have no money, and now they need to get $200 million to finance their Netflix show. And what it essentially is, it's a bit more of a meditation on the money that you need to make your art and to be an artist, and the pipelines and procedures and the money trails about how do we finance ourselves and our work as artists. And it deals with things like crowdfunding. But what the basic shtick is that they're going to try to get money from this audience, and they have a hat out, and their people in the audience actually will get up and put money in the hat as the show goes on. And then they're like, okay, well, we got to do all these things to, spend money to make money. So they hire individual people from the audience to be like, okay, you're going to be our financial advisor. So here's $100. Tell us how we can make more money. And then various other things like that. So it's very fun. It's very shticky, very clownish. They're both very funny, very talented people. I think I went into this show with very high expectations, which maybe isn't fair to them, because mail order was just like hands down one of the best things I've seen. Certainly at that year's Fringe, maybe like ever at Fringe. It is just like one of those like truly excellent, memorable shows. And this one, as like the bold follow-up project, I expected it to kind of up the ante, especially when you're adding a whole second clown who can bring their own creative perspective. And it was being directed by another fairly famous clown named Petra Massey, who's from the UK and part of a rather large clown collective called Spy Monkey. And with Petra Massey, they workshopped this show in Las Vegas prior to bringing it to Fringe. And before that, it was in New York Comedy Festival. And before that, they just workshopped it in a bar in Brooklyn. I think I was expecting it to be like, okay, I've seen mail order. What's the next step? And it borrowed a lot of cues from mail order, but in ways that I found kind of underwhelming by comparison. I'm going to spoil it a little bit. So if you happen to see an iteration of this down the line, maybe stop watching this segment right now. But you might recall in mail order, Mac, that about halfway through the show, this woman got up and like she wanted to leave because she was like not loving this, making fun about human trafficking. And then Shanice got that lady's attention, didn't let her leave, and kind of kept like bringing her into the show. And then that woman started playing an integral part of the show. And like the amazing acting that performer did, who was indeed an audience plant, but you don't know that while you're watching it.
That was one of those great twists.
Yeah. And like they did, like we had a debate in our review of that about like, should they have had the big dance number at the end, the well choreographed dance number that reveals like, okay, if you weren't certain that this was a plant, now's how we show it off. But or should they have sent the audience home thinking that like, wow, that is the most amazing improv, and like, can you believe that lady got up and then got drawn back into the show, and then this other guy in the audience also. But this one tries to do kind of the exact same joke, but less so in a way. Whereas in mail order, that like became the whole thrust of the second half of the show. This one's kind of just like a little stinger at the end, where this one guy who they've sort of been like picking on in the audience the whole time, near the end, like they're dancing to try to get money, the characters, and he like gets up and he's like, I didn't pay this much for a ticket to see a 40-year-old woman dance, and he's just like marching away. Like right off the bat, I'm like, okay, that's a less credible gripe to have with this. Like, you're coming to see two funny ladies do a clown show. Like, isn't that basically what you signed up for? Also, she's not 40, she's like 33, and that's a joke they make in the show. But like, it feels like with mail order, you're like, that somebody's like, I don't think you should be joking about human trafficking. I just kind of want to go, and then not being allowed to go. But this guy had like a much less believable gripe and was like unnecessarily angry about it, and then still gets brought back in. And they don't do as much with him as they did with that female character who tried to leave in mail order. So like, it's like a greatest hits reel, but not playing them as well as how I've seen them before. And when you're kind of seeing this as like, I love that previous show, what do these artists have in store next? Or what does this one artist and now her new collaborators have in store for us next? I felt like there was like more they could have done with it, more ways that I would have liked to see it go in new, different directions. And unfortunately, I did leave a little disappointed on those grounds. I still thought it was very entertaining. I did like actually run into both of them in separate shows after the fact, and I've talked to them. And Shanice in particular told me that after the opening performance, which is the one that I saw, they actually like did a lot of like reworking and retooling it. And as with the nature of clown, it's going to be different in every show anyway. So as what I'm describing maybe isn't even accurate to a version that whoever's listening to this saw after. And I do hope that there was ways that they maybe did like continue to retool and refine this, because I think there's like so much potential, and so much of that potential is just how funny both of them are. These are very skilled, very thoughtful, very precise, very exuberant clowns. I love seeing their work. I just think, again, I'm probably holding it to a standard of my own expectations, which isn't fair to them. But I think there's ways they could have done more with this and tightened the show in a way that we saw, similar to what I said about Farce in the segment about Rhinoceros Collective, going back to the show on Furnish. I think what mail order did so well was that it gave the illusion of chaos, but was very clearly what by the end we realized just how precisely crafted it was. And this one feels a little more stringy, balls
Mhm.
to the wall, who knows what's going to happen. And maybe some shows things really go amazing, and
Mhm.
maybe I just got like one that was a little more lackluster, which is unfortunate.
Right.
I will continue to be a champion for these two artists. I will see basically anything they do within geographic convenience of Toronto. These are certainly artists you do want to keep watching out for.
Love that. Okay. And back to you again, Ryan,
Okay.
for Milk Lemonade by Malamarsh.
Mellow marsh, like marshmallow, you see.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, that's the thing. I almost said
Yes.
marshmallow. I'm like, wait a
your
minute.
brain your brain wants to do it the
Yes.
correct way, which is the wrong way in this case. So I had a curational impulse to put clown shows together here. This sadly is not one of the ones that I profiled in that article, although I did link to it and like a little thing at the end about how many different clown shows there are.
Mhm.
And it's a shame because I loved this show. This is so good. This is very top tier clowning.
Could
What
it earn a 5 out of 5 N?
Well, I'm not doing this one for next. I only had like an allotment of 4 shows to review, so
Ah.
this one was kind of a late addition. The clown duo here is Jonas Trottier and Emma Nels. Again, apologies
Mhm.
if we're ever mispronouncing anyone's names, but we've seen both of them before. Jonas was in Stiff and Sons, which we reviewed in last
Love
year.
that show.
Remember,
One of the
he did
skaters
like
from
that.
last year.
Yeah, so huge standout. And remember, like that funny montage of like the guy playing a million different characters.
Yes.
Like so, yeah, this is we have very good clown credentials on display here for what this guy can pull off. And Emma, who you might remember, was in that. She played Sister James in that production of Doubt that I didn't love, but you
Yes.
liked a lot more than I did.
Yes.
And I also saw her in another Fringe show from, I think, 2 years ago, Fatal Charade, which I think is actually by the same director as this show. Jack Davidson is the director, who I think you've also seen in the Transcendence show. So
Yes. You're right.
yeah, so basically lots of like stacked artists in this. And what we have here is just this 2-person clown show where the theme is elementary school through the eyes of clowns. And that is just such a banger premise right here.
Absolutely.
Because so much of clowning is about embracing the inner child. And boy, are these artists really good at doing that, because they take on like that child, almost like baby talk, but like never too over the top of just like, yeah, how do full grown adults behave like children? And doing it through the medium of clown, like literal red-nosed clown in this case, is just like such a perfect way of pulling that off. I have my notes here because like there's like just so many like great scenes through this, but it's basically just like a series of vignettes about what goes on in this elementary school. They both play multiple characters who are differentiated from each other through vocal inflection, sometimes like a light costume change, but it's just various different kids and their teachers. And the teachers are often just as childlike and silly as the kids, which I think is like a philosophy of representing the student teacher dynamic that we could see in like cartoons like Recess, if that's something that you watched as a child. But
I love Recess. That was one of my favorite shows.
Yeah, so I think like there's some, certainly I don't know if that was a direct influence on the show, but I see like several pieces of like DNA from that, and the way that people like Principal Prickly is just as childlike as the children. Just like all these like funny little scenes of like things about like taking tests. There's like very reminiscent of the Mr. Bean taking the test classic Mr. Bean sketch. There's this very funny recurring bit where 2 of like the main recurring clown characters, Janine and Jimmy, I think their names were, they clearly have a crush on each other, but they're too shy and embarrassed to say or do anything about it. But like it's just very funny the ways that like they keep getting so close, but then like, oh no, gross, blah. Like it's a how you have like, it's very, yes, if you ever were a kid who had a crush on anyone, like super relatable. They play like the game MASH, if you remember that from childhood. No, it's not.
If you describe the game, I could probably would say if I played it.
It's like where you write the word MASH up top. I forget what it stands for, like mansion, apartment, shed.
Oh
house.
yeah.
And
Okay,
then like,
yes.
and then like on one axis, like what your job will be, who you're gonna marry, and then you like cross through, and like so that, and then like that pays off in like a very cute, emotional way. And at the end, that they bring it back. There's like funny things about like trading snacks at lunchtime that quickly turns into like an auctioneer bit with the audience of like, you know, who wants my fruit by the foot? What do you have to offer for it? Like it's all very good. There's this excellent montage about like the parent-teacher interview scene where it's like showing just like the like, you know, trying to deal with every single like student's parents and like thinking through all the different dynamics and like your child, you know, needs to improve in math. cut to the next one. Your child needs to improve in math. Your child needs to improve in math. I think I need to improve in how I teach math. Is the takeaway. Just like so much. I could go on. Like it's just go on this the whole thing to just be like me, just like recounting all of the jokes. They're so funny. I hope they bring this show back because it's so good. I don't even know how much more to say about it, but these are just like two excellent performers. Very tight. It's sketch, but like they have controlled exactly what they want each one to be. It's very clearly refined. There's a clear outside vision of what the whole should look like. And it's really doing a whole panorama of the various stories you can tell in this very simple premise and very simple setting. Milk Lemonade, hilarious. If you ever get a chance to see this or see these performers do something else with these types of clown characters, I highly recommend it because I had a blast.
Well, we're about halfway through, which means it is time for our second of our three pieces where Ryan and I both saw the show. Mm-hmm. And this one, you and I both got our certificates.
Did you sign yours? No, you didn't sign yours.
Oh, I didn't sign mine. Hold on.
Yeah,
I'll sign mine right now. Stand by.
Da, da, da. Is that the graduation song? How does the graduation song go? There we go. As we go on, we remember.
There we go.
Okay.
I've signed mine. Anyway, Ryan, the show we are now going to talk about is Stroke of Genius, Pantomime Masturbation Through Performing Arts History by Boiled Horse Productions. Taught by Dr. Walter Winkworth Perez, and the chairperson is Henrietta Reynolds Tichborne.
Yes, she's the one financing the whole endeavor.
That's great. And this is basically a history of Vulva Voom, the Spankin' Shyster.
Yeah, it was a fun time. What a good show.
So Ryan, what is this piece exactly?
So this piece is...
Do you teach this in your theater history class?
Parts of it, kind of, actually. We talk about satyr plays.
Does include as many elaborate graphs that just kept getting more and more ridiculous as the went on.
Yeah, so this is framed as an academic lecture, which is financed by this Tichborne Foundation, whose whole thing
And the way they even said Tichborne almost sounded like touch porn. There's a way they said it with the southern accent that I was like, it's just sounding very much like a different name.
This whole thing is euphemisms and wordplay. Yeah, it's great.
Very Monty Python. It's almost like John Cleese giving a monologue.
Sure. Yeah. So the Tichborne Foundation funds scholars on the fringes of acceptable research to give them an opportunity to do their very niche research on very niche subject matter. And there's a twist of where that's going soon. Yes. But with that out of the way, Dr. Walter Winkworth Perez is the world's foremost expert on artistic interpretations of masturbation throughout history. Pantomime masturbation, as they refer to it in the show. So what he is presenting, funded by the Tichborne Foundation, is a lecture on his research findings, all about the history of what seems like a lowbrow, bodily, vulgar form of art, masturbation, and artistic representations thereof, how it has manifested throughout history. And so much
particularly with this like Chaplin-esque.
Yes. So which culminates in the main centerpiece of the production or of this history, which is a silent movie star named Ira K. Goldsmith, whose stage persona is not the little tramp, but specifically the Spankin' Shyster. And right off the bat, on the back of our diplomas, we have there are two performers here. Shane Mayforth plays Professor.
My thing is cutting.
I guess
green screening them.
That's fun. So Shane Mayforth plays Dr. Winkworth Perez, and the Spankin' Shyster is played by Vulva Vavoom. And what a wonderful. So, and who we never actually see on stage, but throughout the lecture is presented in these fully produced silent movie shorts. Phenomenal. Yeah. I was actually talking to Vulva Vavoom, running into them after I just had a different show at a different venue, and they told me that there's behind the scenes videos where you can watch the making of all of that. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet because
is that on like one of the QR codes?
Yeah, I'm sure if you follow here or perhaps just follow the company on Instagram, you could find where to watch those. And I encourage people
because they have a 14-foot sewn sausage like like string of sausage that they
Yeah,
had to
just
use.
pulling them sausages
Yeah.
infinitely, which
Yes.
is a commentary
Yeah.
on
World
rapid
War One.
yeah,
Yeah.
consumption and the
Yes.
greed and avarice of Kaiser Wilhelm's Germany.
That's right.
This was a precursor to Chaplin's The Great Dictator.
Yes.
The
Paired
Spankenscheister
with,
did it
the
first.
croissant in the pants.
Yes, of course. So this is just so much of this is framed as just like honest to goodness lecture that, like, yes, the Spankenscheister isn't a real person, like that's all fabricated, but like what I'm kind of struck by this show is this is actually like a pretty insightful yet simultaneously ridiculous meditation on low art, erotic art, vulgarness, the archive, what gets preserved, what
Yes.
is deemed important or culturally significant.
Yeah.
And
This reminded me of like one of our first year theater history lectures
yeah,
that the late great Professor Robert Fothergill would present to us. And I mean, at one point I wanted to turn and be like, is some of this fact like at one point they're talking about like we had the Greek plays or sorry, the comedies, the tragedies, and then there were the third
the
category,
Seder plays, yeah.
the satyr plays. I was like, do we ever talk about the satyr plays in theater
We
history?
we did, yes, because that's now, as they point out in this show, that their Seder plays were not very well preserved. We only have one of them surviving, which they don't name in this show, but because I'm a theater history guy, I could tell you that it's the Cyclops by Euripides, which is the only surviving Seder play, and so much of what we know or think we know about the genre is based just on this one extant document. Some maybe others exist in small fragments, but that's the only one that exists in entirety. And within this lecture, he gives this observation that why haven't they survived the same way that so many more of the tragedies and even the comedies have is because they were considered disposable. These were funny little comic interludes where the satyrs, i.e. like half man, half goat characters who were very vulgar and often had these very
Phil
large
from
phalluses.
Hercules.
Yeah, Phil from Hercules, who were perpetually horny, and the characters walked around with these big phalluses. And, you know, the one that we have that survived Euripides' Cyclops is it's presumably from a larger trilogy of plays that would have been performed and that Euripides would have put on at the Festival of Dionysus about the journeys of Odysseus, taking episodes from the Odyssey.
Say it ties into Odysseus because that's what the Cyclops is.
So, and then in addition to having these three tragedies, you just have this little shtick about these funny goat men doing their own version of the Cyclops episode. And you could say like, oh, well, that's not high art. No wonder so many of these didn't survive because it's just like, you know, vulgar for the masses. But how much do we not know about culture because these things haven't preserved? Does what gets preserved dictate what we deem important about a culture just as much as what is deemed important dictates what survives? So through this very ridiculous lecture, and it is ridiculous, I don't want to like be too all high and mighty about it.
I was floored because at one point they have one where the Spankenscheister is up on like a crow's nest, gets attacked by seagulls and falls into the sea as they're trying to, you know, whack off.
Yeah.
The other one is like, you know, the dinner gong.
Which he boing with his pelvis. He because he needs something long and hard to whack the gong with. Like there's like it's silly.
Fresh pepper.
Was that? Oh yes, that was the first actually one they show with the big pepper mill, and that's the thing. Like, so it's just like a big sequence of just like this funny silent movie star whose whole shtick is dealing with phallic shaped objects or doing things with their own member. That became a shtick, but because it is so vulgar and so contrary to good taste and good artistry, this is a figure who isn't remembered. Now, it's not a real figure, but it just as well could have been, because for all of
there's a lot of artists who like we read about, but we don't have any of their actual filmography to watch because the film's either been destroyed or lost in fires because the film footage was very flammable, like that. The actual film was very flammable at the time. So there's quite a few lost things where we have like small shots or screen snippets of certain moments, but not the full thing. But it's like, it's just so well done. Like, once again, just all those little clips are just incredible to watch. Like, you and I were sitting there watching, going, "Wow!" Like every time they come up with a new clip, it's like the like production value of this piece is incredible.
Yeah, and so with each one of these clips, as you kind of alluded to earlier, there's this increasing complexity of these quasi-structuralist charts and diagrams that is kind of like framed as like a way of putting intellectual rigor on this thing that otherwise would get discounted as not worthy of consideration. But and this is something like is very popular in the structuralist scholarship of like the 60s and 70s, how you kind of like plot things on these axes, and it kind of like gives us this numerical score for how sort of each one. And we see, each time that we see one of these charts, it has more and more axes and dimensions until the last one is finally one named after himself. That clearly he has made the most complex chart for judging masturbatory performances.
It's like a cube. We've gone from like a basic pie graph or like a Venn diagram,
or even just like a line. The first one was,
to being like a full-on three-dimensional cube. Graph.
We're finally capturing the full complexity of these performances. But the sort of big kicker twist that we get to at the end is that the Tichborne Foundation is not always approving of the complete like academic freedom of how the professor wants to do this material, because we learn that the reason why they finance this research isn't because they care about letting scholars pursue their niche interests, but because the son of Mrs. Tichborne has a public masturbation charge against him because of some illicit behavior that he did in a not very appropriate setting. So they're trying to legitimize the practice of masturbation, not as a vulgar thing that bad people do.
With like, very bad source material. That's very kind of like right-wing education-based things that we're seeing these days.
So they're trying to justify that the son wasn't being a bad person, that he was doing a long tradition of the performing arts that we have scholars writing and lecturing and talking about. And we also learned that the professor himself, because he is such an avid enthusiast of this work that, as you point out, has not been very well preserved in the annals of history, can only be seen in these rare screenings every so often, and without
certain ones. There are ones that you can see all the time, but there are ones that are shown sparingly. So when he sees he travels all over the North Americas to watch these special screenings of these often not done films, and he's having to reenact them in the movie theater.
He has to learn the beats and the movements himself, so that he can then pass this knowledge on to his students, which got himself in a bit of legal hot water for displays of public masturbation that he insists were purely for academic research pursuits, only the noblest. And maybe he means that, maybe not, but either way, it's very funny. And I just love that this show commits to the bit, actually comes up with an intellectually rigorous argument that like honestly could hold up to scrutiny, and that also creates all this like really hilarious material that it very interestingly dances the line between how much of this is funny because of how absurd it is, and how much of it is like, oh wow, that's actually kind of thoughtful. It doesn't take itself too seriously, while the whole point of the joke is, isn't it funny how seriously we take it? I love it. Like, this show is exactly my bag. It is just like the perfect intersection of like academic stuff, fringe stuff, lowbrow comedy, highbrow analysis. I just put everything I love into a blender, and you get this really funny show about yanking it. Any last thoughts about it?
Not too many. I mean, you've kind of covered it all, but I mean, I'll just say, like, this piece really pitched itself as almost like a Monty Python-esque piece, and I came away going, oh my god, this piece could easily fit within a Monty Python episode, where like you have John Cleese doing these lectures, and you have Eric Idle dressed as the Spankenscheister doing all these cutaways. Like the way they've written this piece is so well done and so tightly succinct that I was enwrapped right away. And it's an easy like setup. Like, it's really just a projector screen and a lecture and a lectern and a remote, and that's it. And it's really just one man speaking at you with 2 or 3 cut-ins from Miss Tichborne. But like, it's just such a great, well done piece. Like this was, as you said, this is like the perfect Fringe show.
Yes.
Where I can easily see this touring at the Edinburgh, the Hamilton. Like,
I think this is touring. I believe they're from Florida, the company, and
Ron DeSantis' estate.
Yes.
How fitting.
Yes. So,
No, I just thoroughly enjoy Stroke of G's. That, like, this was easily one of my top ranked pieces at the Fringe so far. I still have 2 more to go, but so far,
at time of recording.
At time of recording, I still have 2 more to go to see, but this ranks very, very highly amongst what I've seen. Every word pun, every Spankenscheister gimmick was very well received by moi. So thoroughly. And they even had a little giveaway program QR code thing. So points for that. All right. On to the next one, which I believe is part of the Next Stage Festival, and that is Songs by a Wannabe Barbara Johnston.
So yes, as you mentioned, this is part of the Next Stage Festival. Over the course of this roundup, we will be covering all 4 of the shows that are
There's 2
part
in
of
this episode.
2 in this episode, and then I don't know what the distribution and the later ones will be. We haven't worked out the running order yet. But for those who aren't familiar, they're not doing a separate Next Stage Festival, which has traditionally happened in either the fall or winter.
We covered it in like the late fall. It was like November.
Yeah, it's changed when they've had it over the various years, but last year we covered it when it was in October. And yeah, traditionally this is a separate festival that is also run by the Toronto Fringe administration and is usually considered like a next step up. Often it brings back artists who've had success at Fringe and gives them a new platform that, unlike Fringe, is completely curated and allows them to take things to the next level. This year, for various reasons that we don't have to get into here, they have decided to fold what would have been a separate festival, the Next Stage, into a small series of plays that are being presented as part of the Fringe. And because ordinarily we would cover both of them and we would try to see all the Next Stage shows in their own review roundup, here we've been really making a point that we will cover all of these Next Stage offerings here in our Fringe roundup. So first of which is Songs by a Wannabe, which is, okay, so...
Were you a Spice Girls fan, Ryan?
Okay, so here's the thing. I sadly didn't read up enough about what the show was about going into it, and from the moment it started, I was like, oh man, I don't know if I know enough about the Spice Girls to appreciate what this show is doing. So the plot is that Barbara Babs Johnston, playing herself, is the ginger spice and creative mind behind...
Was it actually Ginger Spice?
I don't know what you're trying to ask here. Let me finish my sentence.
Was it like a real Spice Girl?
It's a Spice Girls tribute band. Let me finish my sentence before you ask questions.
I was like, wow, friend, you got a real Spice Girl to come to the show.
So she plays Ginger Spice in Canada's largest Spice Girls tribute band.
Got it.
Called Wannabe. And she is like the creative mind behind that band, and she like organizes their tours. And what this show basically is a backstage confessional during one of their concerts, the final performance of what they call the Tour from Hell. They're in a small town in Michigan, and their Buffalo engagement got canceled, so this is the end of the tour. They can finally go back home after this, and it has been a rough ride, to say the least. And the reason why Ginger Spice is backstage to give us this confessional one-person monologue that makes up the substance of this show is because they have a shtick during the concert where Ginger leaves the band, which, if you are a Spice Girls fan, more so than I am, you would know that Ginger Spice did leave the Spice Girls at one point and started a solo career. So in this tribute concert, they reenact her leaving and then coming back to the band and singing her one solo hit, It's Raining Men. While there's a long stretch of the show where she's not on stage, she comes back to her dressing room and gives us this monologue where she tells us the story about this tour from hell. It's an interesting piece, this meditation on what does it mean to be a tribute artist, essentially, someone who has no sense of proprietary ownership over the art that they perform, and yet holds it so dearly and so personally. There's a thrust throughout the show about how there's this now rival Spice Girls tribute band, also from Toronto, and seems to be following them on the tour despite claiming to know nothing about them. And because they are marketing themselves, this rival band, as the most authentic Spice Girls experience, people are going to their concerts thinking that it's this band, but like at the same time it's like, they're stealing our idea, we are the Spice Girls tribute band, but like none of you are the Spice Girls. Like you're both this is a derivative concept that you're putting a lot of blood, sweat, and tears and toil and genuine artistry into, but it's like, well, who does this belong to? Can anybody lay claim to being the one and only? For the most part, like, this show doesn't get into like the weeds of that kind of debate. It brings up these ideas which are interesting, but it's more so about like, wow, you've put a lot of yourself into making this thing that anybody can rip off. Maybe it's time to kind of rethink your career. And this is a show about burnout above all, more so than it is a show about the complexities of ownership and art and authenticity. And throughout the show, there are interspersed songs. The songs themselves are written by Annika Johnson with music and lyrics so Barbara Johnston and Annika Johnson and Susie Wilde. So the three of them collectively have like written the songs. And like, I'm not a big Spice Girls fan, but I actually like personally, with that lack of knowledge, I had a hard time telling which songs were necessarily written originally for the show and which are the actual Spice Girls songs. So kudos to the writers like for creating this music that I think like fits very well within the musical milieu that a novice like me is able to not recognize it. I'm sure like obviously the real fans, but yeah, they're very well written songs. She performs them very well. I feel like this show does fall into what I would call the solo musical problem, is that like the classic saying about musical theater is that when the emotions bubble up too much, you can no longer speak, you must sing, and when you can no longer sing, you dance.
You got it. Yeah.
I find solo musicals in particular never quite reach the level where that singing feels necessary. The songs fit the themes and the plot points of where she is in the story. They're meditating on all the right things, but because she's just talking by herself to the audience, it doesn't feel like it's prompted by that intensity of bubbling emotions. It's just like, and now here's the part where I sing a song that's going to continue the story that I'm telling you, which I think is just sort of an occupational hazard of the form, but it is a way that I think that solo musicals don't often feel as much like they earn their songs in the same ways as non-solo musicals. It has a bit of like a concert feel in this sort of backstage setting, but that's kind of, it is what it is. And Mitchell Cushman of Outside the March fame is credited as the director on this production. And I do see a lot of his kind of directorial stamp on this. There's a recurring bit where they use like Barbie doll versions of like the Spice Girls to kind of reenact various scenes between the characters, which give a sense of dialogue where none really exists. And when they're reenacting this tour, they do it in miniature with this like kind of tour bus RV Barbie dream vacation thing where they kind of truck it along. And I do really feel like there's that sense of like miniaturism, immersion, and especially when Cushman deals with solo shows like this. Recently, Outside the March did Rosamund Small's show, Performance Review, which had similar types of flourishes. I think like, you can definitely see his artistic stamp. And because he is an artist that I think gets a lot of people excited to see shows like this, I do feel like you will still get a good Mitchell Cushman experience from this.
Any last big thoughts for you, Ryan?
Okay, yeah. One big thought is,
okay,
this is a tribute to burnout. And like, it's about doing something you love as your job, but not seeing it pay off and not feeling like it's going anywhere, and like maybe recognizing that it's okay to change. And, as somebody who's constantly burning himself out with my jobs that I made for myself that are all things that I love and stimulate me, I very much relate and felt like, oh my God, yes, I feel you. I know nothing about the Spice Girls, but like, yes, I totally get the situation you're in. And then I found at the very end, when it seemed like she had learned the good lesson, like it's okay to take a step back and reevaluate and figure out if you're truly happy doing the thing that you thought made you happy, she ultimately decides that, you know what, I'm going to keep doing it because this is what I'm like, oh no, you were so close to learning a good lesson. And it seems like the show and the writing itself doesn't realize that how tragic that is. It's fine to, reassess and realize, no, you do love this thing. You just have to refine your spark. But it really felt right to me when she was like, yeah, maybe I do need to change. And then to have just like such a quick heel turn at the very end kind of seemed a little disingenuous to me. Or maybe it's a cycle of self-perpetuated abuse but it was framed too triumphantly.
It's almost like, Ryan, you every year saying, I'm not going to review that many Fringe shows. I'm going to look after myself and not go crazy.
Yeah, I'm going to.
And then every year you go crazy.
And do more each year, yes. Very relatable in the middle of this Fringe context about how, yes, I'm lucky to do this thing that I love and that fulfills me artistically. But yeah, it's easy to burn yourself out, and maybe you do need to reevaluate. And when she was very close to reevaluating, to end with, on second thought, never mind, seems more tragic to me in this particular moment than the show presents it as. Anyway, that's my last big thought about this. It's a neat show. If it does get legs in some sort of other context, I would encourage people to see it, especially if you are a Spice Girls fan. This is.
I was going to say, Ryan, does it make you want to explore more of the Spice Girls discography?
Not specifically, but like, the songs are bops. Like, I like that. Tell me what you want, what you like,
Yes.
that's,
Yes.
what little I know about the Spice Girls is all pleasant. I have nothing against the Spice Girls. It's just, yeah, it's not the music that I grew up with that holds a special
Fair.
place in my heart.
Fair. Well, we got another next stage piece that you're covering,
Mhm.
and that is Justice for Maurice Henry Carter by Arbez Drama Projects.
Yes. Okay, so this one's interesting. Yes, another next stage piece.
Mhm.
So this is based on a true story about a wrongful conviction case. A man was arrested in the mid 70s for an attempted murder that he most certainly did not commit, but due to various administrative and policing errors, he was arrested for this crime. And once he was behind bars for it, the justice system was very happy to wash their hands of it and not have to think about relitigating this case that was most certainly a miscarriage of justice. And it's about specifically the relationship that formed between the convicted man, Maurice Henry Carter, and a figure named Doug who was helping him get his case relitigated. I kind of missed exactly what Doug's job is. At one point, he says he's not a lawyer, and I think maybe he said he's a journalist, but he's like very like invested in these types of cases, and
Okay.
he develops this personal relationship with Maurice that becomes like a brotherly love, Gilgamesh and Enkidu kind of relationship that really motivates him to do everything in his power to help this man get off because he did not commit the murder. They are played by two veteran actors of the Canadian theater. Walter Borden plays Maurice Henry Carter. You might remember most recently seeing Walter Borden as Polonius in Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead.
Yes.
And R.H. Thompson, another veteran Canadian actor, plays Doug. And we also have this like small additional cast of a 4-member chorus. And over the course of the production, these chorus members play side characters that come in and out of the story, but they also sing a series of hymns and spirituals, classical African American music, often that has roots to slave song traditions and lots of very biblically inflected lyrics. That I think is very interesting that this musical interlude frames the pursuit of justice for Maurice Henry Carter specifically as not just saving this one man, this individual, from something that happened to him, but frames it as part of this longer historical tradition and trajectory of seeking justice for Black communities and the long trajectory of injustice towards that community. So the music very much conveys that very well. What I will say about this show is that it's very straightforward in a way. Like there's not a lot of surprises. At the end of the day, this is a show that's about a very important cause. And it is essentially a PSA for things like the Innocence Project that helps people who've been wrongly convicted get off their charges in the face of a justice system that wants nothing to do with them once they're locked up. Because it feels the weight of the seriousness of this issue, the importance of this history, not just of this one man, but the entire cosmos of justice that he represents. There's like an earnestness that is prioritized over innovation and forensic rigor that is prioritized over dramaturgical creativity. Like it really is just like this is the story of these two guys getting to know each other, and we're going to go through the process of how he was convicted and how we relitigated the case. And it is kind of bland, in my opinion, as a piece of drama, which is unfortunate because it's dealing with serious issues. And I recognize the importance. And if it can make people feel things about that, then that's like a net positive. But I won't say it's like the most riveting play. It really does feel like a PSA more than anything. And like there's little pops of like interesting dramaturgy. The thing about like the spiritual and the music is one of it. There's like one scene where we flash back to the actual shooting that Maurice himself certainly did not commit. They like do it in a way where like they clap for like the gunfire, like to make the sound. Like there's like interesting little pops of like that's a neat bit of staging and business, but on the whole it's just like yep, this is the story and we're doing it. And because it's like so earnest and so forensic in that portrayal, there just really isn't a lot of room to get dynamic or creative or interesting with it. It doesn't help a lot that despite the fact that we have these two veteran actors bringing a sense of gravitas to these roles, neither of them is very well off book.
Okay.
They have to have one of the members of the chorus is sitting there with the script on a music stand, and we are told right off the bat from the beginning that you will prompt them as they need it, and both of them did need to call line quite a few times during the show. And like,
Interesting.
and it's interesting because you think that like part of having these veteran actors is that like, yes, these are like pros who like can do it. Like, I don't know how much rehearsal time they had.
I was
There is
gonna
like,
say, like, is it through your grapevines and social networks, Ron, have you
I,
heard much backstory about
I,
what the
I haven't, and
process of this was like?
I haven't, and I don't want to speculate about it like too much. It's just like yeah, there is a roughness to this production that feels like a very
Mhm.
germinal state. And like personally, if this is going to go places and do other things, I would like to see honestly a much more rigorous rewriting of the script
Right.
before we like polish this production down to the version of itself that it's trying to be. Because I think like because it's so important, I don't want to write it off completely, but I didn't feel it's also like an hour and a half long, which is long by Fringe standards. I know that's not like considered a long play outside of a Fringe context, but there's definitely cuts that could be made, but it's really like bringing you through all of the steps of this process. And when you come to see these actors who you've seen many times before in roles, and again, who bring this sense of weightiness to it, it's unfortunate that it doesn't really feel like either of them is that prepared for this undertaking. And I don't want to hold that like against them specifically as performers. I don't necessarily want to hold it against anyone. It just feels like it is neither a very tight script nor a very tight performance, which to me
Yeah.
feels like it's doing a disservice to the genuinely important conversation that this wants to spark. Even
Right.
when there is like moments of like emotional poignancy in it, I never got emotional watching it.
Mhm.
And I think that is a shortcoming of the material and how it is presented. So, good first step. And again, you cannot dispute the importance of the subject matter, but as a work of dramatic art, this one didn't really do it for me, unfortunately.
Okay. Fair enough. We have a show that's back to me for it, and it is Edgar in the Red Room by the Shylock Project from New York. And this was what I was so sure Ryan was gonna be jumping on to see, but he just hasn't had a chance to see it, unfortunately. But it's one I think Ryan would particularly enjoy. It is a musical, but it is adapting the Fall of the House of Usher, as well as a few other Poe stories. Like we got the Raven in there, obviously. We got kind of the Crimson Death one, or
Mask
the
of the Red Death.
that one, the Castle Macchiato, where you get walled up at the end. So yeah, there's a few of those short stories there, but it's all done in a very fun musical way. And just like our Stroke of Genius piece that we talked very highly about the projections and that work there, this piece too. Oh my god, the projection work that was done. And let's see if I can give a proper shout out to everybody. So the director was Matt Cheroni, who did that, and then projection designer was Lindsay Voorhees, and the work they put into this production, and then same thing with like the costume design by Kaylee Garnelio with the Raven design there, because it was just a human person in like this kind of Raven cape, but just the way they did it was just so dynamic and interesting, and the music was quite catchy. I really enjoyed that. It was great atmospheric and like one of the old buildings, old theater buildings, so it had that really kind of sketchy Poe vibe and adaptation, but also kind of tells the story of Poe himself. And so that's an area where it kind of got a bit jumbled at the end because I got so invested in the Fall of the House of Usher story that then we had this whole other thing about Poe and what was going on with Poe and his death that was mysterious as well, where I kind of it got a little bit messy at the end there. And that's mainly because we had like so many great like Folly House Usher's. Like we had Roger Gusher played by Killian Crowley, and he was just so wonderfully creepy in this piece. Like he was the perfect kind of Igor, like pale madman vibe to him. Like it was great. But yeah, the entire cast, like you have the two writers played by Carly Nicolai and George LeBrun. Like the cast was just great, great chemistry, solid costumes, amazing projection work, very well done. I would happily listen to a cast recording of this piece for sure. I just couldn't say more nice things about it. I mean, Ryan, are you a big Poe fan?
Not overly, honestly. Like I've
Is he kind of like
consumed.
Dickens to you when we found out you weren't a big
It's
Dickens fan either?
no, it's I think I like Poe more than I like Dickens. It's just like, yeah, I consumed Poe at various like English classes and
Yeah.
like, pop culture osmosis, but it's like it doesn't do it for me. I'm not like the creepy vibe kind of guy. It's yeah,
What does that say about me, Ryan?
it's you and however like millions of people love Poe. I don't know. I think why I didn't flock to seeing this show is because I just think, yeah, you see so much Poe adaptation just like in theater and
Yes.
especially at these kinds of festivals that like I'm like, do I need to see another one of these? We saw the one Eric Wolf did, Eldritch, with the Winnie the Pooh characters. That was like the most inventive take. Did this do anything nearly as creative as that?
Different.
Okay.
Different. Like, once again, this was a musical, so different vibe altogether. Eldritch's was like a Monty Python puppet Poe thing where like that was meant to be very over the top satirical. We're gonna go for the gore of Poe. This was not that. This was exploring the writer and his relationship to his own work and the obsession that drives both the character, the narrator, in that piece, and Poe himself, as well as Roderick Usher as well, and the obsession there, like just the dangers of obsession in your work and in your life. So different vibes. I definitely say apple to an orange in that case. But yeah, no, like I had a good time with this one. Like it was definitely an interesting piece. So yeah, I would definitely say solid. It's a solid Fringe show that I definitely could see coming back and doing more things with there for sure.
Cool.
So good job to this team. All right. Next one is another creepy one that you just saw today, actually, Ryan.
I literally just came from this one to do this recording.
That's right. And it's Honey Never Spoils by Bait and Switch. I almost saw this piece, but then just couldn't get it into my schedule in time by the time we got the confirmation and everything to do it. So, Ryan, what'd you think of this piece?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. So, yeah, I'm still chewing. I literally did just come out of it, but so it's basically we follow a group of true crime podcasters. There's 4 of them. I'll read the whole cast's names. So they're played by Chantel Winters, Emery Nguyen, Jada Rifkin, and Jacob Click. Several
Jacob
of these
we saw in
he was Back the Knife in Three Penny Opera. Yes, I've seen several of these actors in plenty of shows before. Yeah, so this is the 4-person team who does this true crime podcast. They've just wrapped up their 9th season, which they say they've done in 5 years. So I'm like, wow, that is an efficient timeline of how they pump these very.
They're like Selena Gomez, Steve Carell, and Martin Short.
I don't know what that refers to. What is that?
Only Murders in the Building.
Okay, yeah, that show that everyone tells me I should watch. Okay,
yes,
cool.
Ryan, you still haven't watched that damn show.
Where do you watch it? Like a streaming
Disney
service?
Plus.
I don't have. That's a streaming service I don't have. There's your answer.
I'll give you a pass for
I don't. That's illegal. So, anyway, what is that a show about podcasters? Is that?
Yes, that's the whole premise. Is that they're true crime podcasters.
Okay.
For murders that only happen in their building in New York.
Okay, there's probably an influence there. A friend who I saw this with said that it's very reminiscent of Pretty Little Liars is how they compared it to, in terms of just like the general vibe. So this is a group of very research heavy, meticulous podcasters, 3 close female friends, and 1 guy who was a recent addition to the team. And they've been telling these stories about abduction cases, often ones that are never solved and don't have closure. And each season has an arc that focuses on a specific case.
Yep.
And they've recently just gotten a big deal with Spotify to produce their 10th season.
That's exciting.
On the condition that their 10th season follows a case that is deeply personal to them, because what got them, although they've never had a serious conversation about this being the impetus, but when they were in their final year of high school, a very close friend of theirs was abducted and killed, and her body found a month later after this very eventful party where they lost her. And they've all been carrying the guilt that they feel for how they left things off with her and what part they might have played and what happened to her inadvertently. So while they've never had a serious conversation about this being the impetus for their show, clearly this is the thing that motivates them to do this kind of research and this kind of work. And for their eventful 10th season, Spotify will give them this big funding boost on the condition that they're going to tell this story. This is the one they got to focus on. 2 of the 3 ladies really don't want to do it. They're like, no, we can't. But one of them, the one played by Jada Rifkin, is like, no, this deal is in motion. I've been working behind the scenes with Spotify. Like, we got to do this. It's happening. We have to give like a teaser trailer for the season in a month. Oh no, ticking clock. How are we going to do it? So with strict adherence to the unity of time and the unity of place, this entire play is set in just like their room, where like they have this box of materials about the case, and like, okay, clock is ticking, we need to put all of our baggage aside and just like start figuring out what happened to our friend so we can build a season of content around it. And so that's basically our
That's a
general
lot of
pitch.
strings. Were they able to pull the plot together in a
It's kind of just like one main string when you like really think about it. Maybe I made it sound stringier than it is, but it's sort of like pretty streamlined. That it is just about them dealing with their personal trauma and baggage around this thing that happened to their friend, while trying to produce this piece of content about it, and how it brings up those old wounds. It markets itself as a slow burn. And like, well, I think that's true. I was kind of like struck, like I didn't necessarily expect that it was going to stick to those classical unities so closely, because like you
this
hear
is
like
longer fringe. This is like 75 minutes. Like it's over an hour long.
Yeah, a little over an hour
on the longer fringes.
Yeah, and it's like, it's interesting. So like when you hear like, oh, it's about like a podcast investigation. Also, Honey is the name of their friend who died. That's the title. Honey Mitchell. So yeah, like I kind of expect like, okay, so they're podcasters, they're doing research, they're trying to get to the bottom of this case. I kind of expected we'd watch more of like them going out, interviewing people, getting this investigation, but no, each of them plays just their single character in the room this one day while they're like just trying to piece all this together. And like, it's a lot of, I guess, accelerated timeline of emotional revelations of like, okay, clock's ticking, we got to make this thing. So quick, let's get all of our trauma out now. That like moves in like a pace that I would say doesn't always feel like very, I don't want to say realistic, but like, yeah, it moves in a way that I think, you know, doesn't always feel like completely like that's the logical place where this would go. Yeah, it's, I don't know. Like the cast does a good job. I think like they master their characters really well. I find a lot of the dialogue and the plot beats a little clunky at times, but I think the cast does a good job of sort of like pulling their characters together. There is a big twist.
I was going to say, Ron, is there a twist where we find out who is like kills Honey?
So here's the thing. It's a twist. I literally wrote in my notebook, which if they do ever remount this, I won't say what the twist is, but like very early on, I wrote in my notebook, prediction, such and such equals killer. And sure enough, that was indeed correct. And I'm not going to fault it for being predictable, although I found it a little predictable in that way. But the part that really kind of bothered me more so about it is once that was explicitly presented as this is indeed the case of what's been going on here, I don't feel like I had any more clarity about why that person did it and did other things that go on that it's hard to talk about without spoiling, but it's very twist for twist's sake, in my opinion, more so than like this is the logical place where this is always going. And the fact that there are seeds of it that make you able to predict it doesn't make it any more, that makes so much sense. There's a lot of, you know, big monologues of the characters unpacking their guilt and their trauma and scolding each other and accusing each other. Some makes more sense than others. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff in this where it's like, as the plot goes on, the characters become more and more forthcoming about like what they know, what they experience, the memories they have, the things they've been hiding, that when you kind of like look back to the earlier portions of it, you're like, okay, this character knew that the whole time, so why you think they would be behaving
redundant?
Well, and you'd think they would have been behaving differently earlier, even if they haven't said this thing yet or weren't ready to say the thing yet. Like the fact that they know that should have been informing their actions earlier in a different way. There's this kind of like big box of materials that Jada's character comes in with. Like, we have everything we need to get started right here. And it's like basically like Mary Poppins's bag of just like whatever you need, you can pull out. Like it is like a kind of like hokey comedic way that I don't know is intentionally comedic. But it's like, oh man, if only we had the police reports. Good news, I just got those. I had to do a Freedom of Information request, and here they are. And like, it's like, okay. And like, so much of the way they parse the materials doesn't feel very like rigorously investigative. Like, they just kind of like pick up random like diaries and like, oh, should we be reading her diaries? And like, they just like do it. And like, they're like flipping through in like no particular order. Whereas you think like if they're trying to build a narrative arc and actually like solve this cold case, that you'd think they would like, you know, this is their 10th season, that you think they'd have this more down to a science, and it all there's a sloppiness to the way these characters approach their work that we can maybe chalk up to the fact that this is a different case and it's personal, and maybe it's not always like this, but I don't know. I think one thing that the script has going for it pretty well is that the fact that this is something that the characters never wanted to talk about, that it's traumatic for them, that does sort of fix the problem of like, why do we need to exposit so much of this? Because, this is something that they presumably all know, except for the one guy who's new to the group, so they often explain things to him. But yeah, the fact that it's like, they never shared their portions of these memories, even with each other, does give occasion for them to bring it up for the first time. And I think that what does indeed feel like a very exposition heavy script, at least has more of like a logical coherence for why that is the case. I don't know. I'm probably sounding like I'm too down on this one. I've read some like not great reviews of it. I don't think it's as bad as like some people I've read and like spoken to have necessarily made it out to be, if you're comparing this sort of lukewarm appraisal against other reviews and endorsements you may or may not have heard. But like, yeah, this wasn't necessarily like a big standout for me, but there's a lot of, good stuff going for it, I guess.
Yeah.
If that sounds like faint praise, I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. We're now going to cut over to one that I just saw tonight. So you and I were at the same venue, different theaters in the venue, but still the same venue. And so we're talking about Hoody by Hoody Inc. And this show had a program that even included the actual original Little Red Riding fairy tale that you can actually fully read, and then even has the moral in it as well. This is a piece that stars Graham Knox as Hoody and Donna Whiteman as Lou. And it was directed by Arthur French III. This is basically a retelling of the Little Red Riding Hood fairy tale, but in this case, Little Red and the Big Bad Wolf fall out of their fairy tale and find themselves trapped in a Toronto apartment in kind of a seedier end of town. And it's kind of that relationship and kind of a reevaluating. There you go. Thank you, Mac. Learn to speak late at night. Reevaluating of their relationship and kind of their relationship within their own fairy tale themselves. And they're being hunted by the woodsman as well, who's out to get the big bad wolf. So yeah, this piece here, this is a fresh piece. Haven't had a ton of time to sit with it. I do think the idea of re-exploring a character and kind of your predetermined destiny, like if you are labeled the big bad wolf, are you always meant to be the big bad wolf, or is there a chance of redemption for you in the world? Like, just because you were a bad person in one story or in one version of your tale, does that mean you are now forever branded that way? And who gets to get a redemption arc? Because we see it many times throughout our lifetimes, with certain celebrities get a chance to come back and other celebrities do not, and are given the heave-ho and are left on the curb, while other people are like, yeah, Scott Rudin, we'll welcome you back, why not?
Topical.
Right, thank you, I'm glad you caught that.
Yeah, is this cancel culture discourse like something that the play is actively playing with, or is it just an association you had because Scott Rudin is on your mind right now?
Well, I mean, the Scott Rudin thing was something I brought in.
Yeah, okay.
But the whole concept of, is the big bad wolf always meant to be the big bad wolf? Can they change it up? And and I thought it was very well done. Like, and I'll even say the fact that Graham Knox plays Hoody, aka Little Red, but he's a 6 foot tall, larger man, bearded man. So not your stereotypical Little Red that you would picture, but the innocence and the willingness to give this character to Lou a chance is something really beautiful. And Graham and Donna had a really great chemistry together on stage that I really, really enjoyed watching the two of them. And she really went for some of the more Wolfian mannerisms and aspects of her character that was really well done. I thought there was a really great performance from both of them there. And I do think, once again, the commentary of who gets a redemption arc and who doesn't is very interesting. I definitely think that is something today where sometimes cancel culture can be very fast moving, to the point where sometimes we don't give due process and a chance for people to be properly vetted and evaluated. And then all of a sudden we're like, oh crap, we didn't mean that person had more to their story than what we thought. Yeah, I definitely think this was touching on some very interesting aspects. The whole concept of falling out of a fairy tale into the real world, being done a few times now, so it's not the newest trope, but I think they did enough with the trope to make it interesting. So I definitely will give it kudos for that. Yeah, I mean, overall, I really had a great time out. I mean, I love a good fairy tale piece. Ryan, you know, almost every year I end up seeing at least one fairy tale or myth based
Which I
piece.
feel like in your case is usually because you're trying to look for something that's kind of like Into the Woods. I think that's what motivates you to make
Well,
these
once again, I
decisions.
think Into the Woods really did set the
Yeah.
framework for modern day retellings of fairy tales. And I mean, you can trace lineages back with Into the Woods that then became the comics like Fables or Disney's Once Upon a Time. Like all these pieces tie back to when Sondheim and Lapine sat down and kind of reimagined how all these fairy tales could interact in the same world with each other. Like the fact that this piece features the Woodsman, Little Bo Peep, Humpty Dumpty. Like there's several characters that show up in this piece that are like that once again that concept of they all live in the world but they're all interacting in a different way, but so kind of based on the character they are. Like at one point Humpty Dumpty is climbing the drain pipe to try and get into the wolf's apartment and he falls off the drain pipe and cracks his head.
Okay.
So
That's, yeah, sounds fatal. Could the king's
fatal and kind
horses
of
and
ties
men
in
help with that?
Humpty Dumpty.
Yeah.
Right? So it's one
Yeah.
of those things there where it's like that. So yeah, I mean, once again, they use it's a similar trope now that we've seen a few times, but there still is something there that is unique and interesting, particularly with the idea of cancel culture and what it's trying to say, or
Okay.
at least trying to commentate on. I don't think it hit everything with the commentary, but I think there's enough there that they definitely could provoke an interesting conversation if two people went and saw it,
Neat.
for sure. So yeah,
Cool.
I enjoyed that. All right, next up, Brian, is one of yours, Galen's Grocer from Galen's Grocer. And
Yeah.
for some reason, I associate say this with like Kim's Convenience or stuff like that.
Okay, you don't know the half of it.
Oh.
Okay. Galen's Grocer is not greater than the sum of its parts. And that's unfortunate because it has some pretty damn excellent parts, and I want to give credit where that is due.
Okay.
And first and foremost, one of the best parts of this is a banger premise, which got me very excited to see this show. That Galen Easton, not Galen Weston, because, anonymity, but Galen Easton is the name of our billionaire protagonist, who is the CEO of Loblaws and President's Choice. And it's funny how they change his proper name, but don't change any of the actual brands that he is the CEO of. But I don't know if that's like a legal loophole that you can again, it's funny. Okay, so Galen Easton is wanting to repair his public reputation because for some reason everybody in Canada hates him. I can't imagine why.
Yeah, why would that be?
Yeah, not because he gouges his employees and gouges the Canadian public with the high prices of his groceries and refuses to give people raises and breaks strikes. And anyway, we could go on. But hey, remember a few years ago when Galen Weston started appearing on like TV commercials for his brands and products and trying to put like a friendly face on the...
It's almost like when South Park had like the oil drilling guy that just keeps showing up being like, we're sorry, we,
yeah, there you go.
blew this up. We were sorry we drilled into the moon and, released Cthulhu. Like, yes.
So this is kind of as an extension of those types of commercials. He's decided that he's going to make a wholesome family sitcom in which he's the protagonist as a wise, humble, and family-oriented shopkeep. And the way he does this is that he hires 3 Asian actors to play his wife and 2 children, which names after the characters from Kim's Convenience.
Is it meant to be like he is ripping off Kim's Convenience?
Well, that's the thing. It's a very funny gag that, yes, you figured it out. That's what they're doing. But I wish they would just let that be something that the audience very clearly recognizes, but they have to spoon feed and explain every single joke.
Okay.
As if they think the audience just will not get this very ham-fisted obvious thing they're doing. And like he does like the thick accent, just like Paul Sun-Hyung Lee does in the show. And the characters are like, oh my God, that's so racist. And he's like, no, it's not racist because I'm not impersonating Korean people. I'm impersonating this one specific actor, from the show we all like, Kim's Convenience, CBC. We've all seen, like, it's over explaining every single joke. And I'm like, okay. Yeah. The premise alone already put this connection in you, Mac, your head. You haven't seen this show and you already got it. So the fact that this script written by Ian Yamamoto, who, again, banger premise and a lot of really funny jokes, that are really well pulled off by the cast. Thomas Sharp plays Galen Weston, or rather Galen Easton, sorry. And we have Mio Suzuki played the Janet character, Lance Oribello, who played the Jung character, Gunjan played the Uma character, and we have a supporting cast that also consists of Ian Yamamoto himself. Makes an appearance in here, and Nitin Anand, who plays various other small characters and is a puppeteer. Yeah, like the cast is really funny, and like they make a lot of good stuff with these jokes. Some of the jokes go on too long. Sometimes that's in a way that's like funny. Sometimes it's in a way that's tiresome. Oh, I also forgot to mention the big thing about the premise is that there is a CEO billionaire murderer on the loose. So, very topical. Again, this is just so much really good stuff here, but it almost feels like they squander this very good premise in a way. So part of the reason why he's making this show isn't just because he wants people to love him, although that's certainly part of it, but also because he's afraid that he's going to be the next target for this CEO murderer. And so he's trying to
very much like, who's that one in like the US right now?
Luigi Mangione.
Yeah.
Yes. Again, it's like yes, we all get the references that this is playing off of, but it's too ham-fisted, and like it's like, do you get the funny topical reference?
See that kills comedy. Comedy can't be like Mel Brooks when he did Spaceballs, Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, never was like, do you get that I'm referencing these other movies?
Yeah.
Like it was like, let the reference go, and people will understand it, or they won't.
And if they don't, like, it could still be funny enough, even if you don't get it as a reference. That like it's just a good joke on its own terms. That's even heightened if you get the reference. And these are like pretty well-known references to very topical and recent things. That So like, and I feel bad. Like last year in Fringe, Stiff and Sons, a show that like I loved, and we've already. I felt I gave a small, tiniest critique for them for kind of doing a version of the same thing, but this like. I retroactively apologize to Stiff and Sons because like they did not get anywhere near this in terms of like how some of the jokes I felt like in that were a little over-explained. This one took it to a whole new level, which again is unfortunate because there's just so much going for it, which is frustrating. Dave Barclay is the director, is clearly having a lot of fun with it. The cast is having a lot of fun. They don't take any of it too seriously. The plot goes off the rails in all kinds of like funny directions. Yeah, I could keep going on, but at the end of the day, like this is a very good premise that I don't think is given the best execution. And for something that is at once trying to get a lot of cachet off of Kim's Convenience specifically, I'm not saying like it's trying to aspire to like that was the big Fringe success story that people like hold dear and like meant something and is still coming back in new productions that continues to mean something that has this like permanent fixture in our Canadian canon. This show has no such high ideals, and I kind of like commend it for that, but it feels like it could be greater than what it is, and to have it sort of like fall apart in a lot of the ways to me made it a bit of a disappointment, or a rather significant disappointment, unfortunately. But there's a lot of great stuff in it, and so many of the jokes really do land.
I mean, I kind of want to see it just because the premise does sound so funny.
It's but by reading the premise on the Fringe website or having me explain it to you now, you've gotten most of the funny part. Unfortunately, there are funny individual jokes in the show. A lot of the writing is funny and sharp that way. Haha, Thomas Sharp is the actor's name. But nothing in it beats just like, oh, that's a funny premise itself.
Right.
Which, it's a shame.
Okay, fair. All right. The penultimate show of this episode is Quiz Icarus by Picario Enterprises. Ryan, this is yours. So give it to us. What is this piece?
Okay.
Did you win the quiz, Ryan?
I did not even compete in the quiz.
What?
So it's not... Okay, this is... Okay, let me back up. This show was made for me specifically. I love this. This is perfect. I recognize that it's not a perfect show, but it is perfect for me. Because I don't know if you know this about me, Mac, but I am a big Jeopardy nut.
We have talked about this in the past.
Yes, not just like a trivia fan. In fact, I often don't do... Like, I'm not a good crossword puzzle person. I often don't like do great at like bar trivia. The odd time
I was about to say, do you compete in some bar trivia, Ryan?
I don't. So I have from time to time, but like specifically, Jeopardy is its own thing, its own game with its own structures. And the more you watch,
it's not that its own spin-off of like just Jeopardy style.
Yeah, but that's not where I'm going with this, so don't
Okay.
derail this thought process with Will Ferrell. But Jeopardy as a game is its own unique thing, that the more you watch it, the more you learn how to be good at it. It's
Right.
not just about, oh, yeah, by knowing a lot of things, you are good at trivia. That's certainly part of it, and you do need to know a lot of things, but you learn the grammar of the game the more you immerse yourself in it. And it is very much like a sport that people train for Jeopardy, not just by making sure they know a lot of stuff, but you like practice your buzzer technique and you think about the way that certain types of categories work and how a daily double might be like an easier answer than like some of the other ones. So you kind of think about how you need to do your wager. And there is this sportification of Jeopardy. And that more than anything is what this show is about, because this, my friend, is a sports story. Quiz Icarus is the story of two Toronto people, Nam Nguyen, who is the playwright of The Perfect Bowl of Thaw, and Caesar from previous Fringes, that was the Julius Caesar rap one, and
Right.
Aaron Brown, who is a friend of Nam's, who has also been on Jeopardy and runs Toronto-based trivia games, including one that he calls, I forget the exact name, is it Almost Jeopardy, which is basically like the game Jeopardy, but in Toronto. So these two guys have both appeared on Jeopardy. Nam actually famously became a one-day champion. He won a game, but then lost the next one, and Aaron made a very big wager on a daily double that prevented him from winning his game, but kind of went down in a blaze of glory, flew too close to the sun, so to speak, as they say in the show. So this is the story of these two guys just telling the audience about their relationship to Jeopardy, what Jeopardy has meant to them, how they kind of realized they were good at it, and how they eventually trained in the high intensity sport-like way, like athletes, to be qualifiers for this show and eventually go on it and then do that experience. Because it is that kind of athletic event, not physical, but mental and specifically strategy is what so much of this show is about, the way they train, these two guys helping each other train to be on this show. And there's like various other like Jeopardy greats, including Toronto's own Mattea Roach, makes an appearance, not on stage, but like in the narrative as somebody who came to help them sort of train at one point. And like, if you are a Jeopardy fan, you're like, oh my God, Mattea Roach is part of the story now. Like, it's a bit like, this is exciting. Right. Yeah, it's just this like really compelling narrative that if you have watched the show and seen these guys on it and got excited like I did when, oh my God, Nam, I know him. Nam, he's a Toronto playwright. Oh my God, he's on Jeopardy. Like, I remember having that feeling or that reaction watching that episode of Jeopardy and seeing him on, and then feeling so much pride. Like, I didn't even know Nam personally at that point. I've since met him actually more recently, but like, I'm just like, oh my God, Toronto playwright just became a Jeopardy champion. Like, this is so exciting. And like, he set records for like his buzzer speed. So like, he's like this is just like a really exciting game and this very compelling personal journey from somebody who just like starts off as a gifted kid who they don't really know what to do with, and finding a way to sort of like put that energy into something productive but also short-lived, that you have like a very brief moment of fame. Even somebody who has like multiple wins on Jeopardy, they film 5 episodes of Jeopardy in a single day. Like, it is such a short portion of your life that goes on to define so much of the rest of your life and what you are seen to have achieved and what you do go on to achieve after. And so many of the people, for every one person that wins a game of Jeopardy, are 2 people who lose, who maybe get a chance in the more recently introduced Second Chances tournament. But this is somebody who's trained so hard to get to this moment, and then that's just gone and you're never coming back. So it's just like, there's so much of this kind of like inside baseball Jeopardy minutia that me, as like a longtime fan of the show, somebody who maybe perhaps one day would like to go on it, but I don't know if I have it in me to go through.
You can do it, Ryan. I'd be there cheering you on.
Well, it's more just like what this show really puts into focus is the athletic regimen you need to. It's just, like, I watch the show and I get a large percentage of the answers correct, but that's not the whole game. That's something
strategy behind
that's something you do on your couch. Like, I know these answers, but that's the first step to even being able to compete. That like, and I don't have to compete with anyone. And I'm just like, oh yeah, Marcel Proust. That's the answer. What is Marcel Proust on the couch or whatever? But I don't know why that's the random Jeopardy answer that came to my mind first. But the fact that you have to like out buzz the other people, you kind of get in. You have to buzz on things that you're not even certain if you know the answer, just to even have a fighting chance here. You have to think about your strategy, how much you bid. There's so much things that like that's not even the half of it. But yeah, it's this show is like really fun. If you like Jeopardy at all, like this is like an amazing kind of piece that really just feels like it's kind of like the real Jeopardy is the friends we made along the way kind of message. But it is really about like the community of Toronto trivia people rallying together behind each other, and sort of like, you know, it takes a village to raise a Jeopardy contestant in a lot of ways. It's really fascinating. So now, you asked at the beginning, did I win the quiz? I was under the impression that this show would be more interactive trivia game than it is, and it's not. They do at the beginning sort of like ask people in the audience, like, who wants to play Jeopardy? Who wants to do a quiz show with us? Da, 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 da. And they let 2 or 3 people in the front row hold one buzzer that at various points throughout the narrative, they ask Jeopardy style questions and those people are invited to answer it. Mm-hmm. And then at the very end of the show, I want to say like the last 10, maybe 15 minutes of it, they do a mock version of a Jeopardy game, or like a truncated mini Jeopardy game where they invite those people up from the audience to come on stage and they compete against Aaron with Nam hosting in like a mini version of Jeopardy. And to see a winner gets $100. And in the show that I saw, one of the audience contestants actually did beat Aaron, not because they necessarily knew more than him, but because they just bet differently. And like, it's again, there's so much more to this game than just
there's a lot of strategy that goes into it.
And yeah, that was really exciting. And like, I had the same trivia fan pleasure that I get watching the show from the comfort of my own home, just being like, yeah, I can mumble the answers myself, and to my credit, I got a lot of them right. But yeah, just like I do when
Would you have won that $100, Ryan?
I don't know if I would have won it, because it's not just about knowing the answers. Me sitting in the audience mumbling to myself, what is Marcel Proust, doesn't necessarily mean that I will be the first one to buzz in to get it right, that I'll risk it for the biscuit in this way. Maybe I too would fly too close to the sun. Maybe I would bet too conservatively. But it was, this show, I think, to me, was marketed very much as like try your luck at playing Jeopardy against these 2 guys who've actually been on the show. And like, to me, the real beating heart of this show is the narrative, the sports story. And I, somebody who doesn't care about sports and fails epically at the sports categories in Jeopardy, as there's a joke in the show about how they do too, but it's the kind of thing you need to study if you're going to go on Jeopardy. Getting invested in this kind of sports story for something that is just as much of a training regimen and enterprise in that way, it's really something, and it makes me appreciate what people like about sports, which is kind of funny to say when it's something that, you know, is very much the nerd activity that feels so far away from the jocks. But you can kind of get that sort of dynamic from anything you care that much about and are willing to put that sort of energy into doing well. That's Quiz Icarus.
Okay. All right, Ryan, it's the big finale of the night.
All right.
And it is by far my favorite thing I've seen at Fringe.
Okay.
And it is Iris Says Goodbye by Mixtape Projects, who did Killing Time, that you and I both really enjoyed.
You might even recall that at the very beginning of this year, when we did our Happy New Year editorial and we said what we're most looking forward to this year, I said Iris Says Goodbye is the show I'm most looking forward to in this year, not just in Fringe, but just period Toronto theater this year. And I knew nothing about it at the time. It was just on the goodwill of how much I loved Killing Time, that these artists have a show in Fringe. You goddamn know I'm going to see it. I'm super excited.
That's right. And I will say, point right off the top, they have a program. So
good point.
Good on them. So Iris Says Goodbye. So I was actually pitching it to my parents today on my walk home, and their friends who they have staying over at their place right now, because they were asking what shows have I seen, what do I liked, and I said Iris Says Goodbye is by far one of my most favorite Fringe experiences that I've had in my last few years covering Fringe.
Wow.
It has stood out to me. And Ryan knows, because he and I sat next to her, because by luck of the draw, he and I saw the show on the same day. And now I kind of wish I'd seen it on a different day just to shake it up. Because the show opens with like the stage manager or one of the cast, coming out to kind of explain that, hey, we got all these objects along the front of the stage, and there's 20 scenarios, and you're going to see 8 of them. So we encourage you to come back. And I turned around and I went, oh, like really? Like, we're not going to see everything. Like, do they really expect us to come back? And by the time we were done, I was like, yeah, I would absolutely come back to see this piece again. Basically, the whole premise of it is that Iris has passed away. She has found herself in this like afterlife airport where either you get sent back down to Earth to relive another life or you move on.
Which is a rare opportunity to get sent back to Earth.
Yes.
Iris has it lucky that she's given this opportunity.
Yeah. Basically, they're stuck waiting in the airport. You either move on from the airport or you get sent back down. And Iris gets a really lucky chance of not only getting sent back down, but she gets to preview potential lives she could live via the deaths that she's going to experience in those lives. And that's where those objects come in. So basically picking up an object triggers a scenario that we're going to see. From there, we then get this whole situation where there's 3 different three different performing irises, as well as the main iris, who is witnessing her life through these different experiences. And so this piece was like The Good Place in many ways, but it also was just such a smart bit of theater where this piece could run. I could see it running off Broadway for years. I could see it running on Broadway as well. Like these easily could fit in a Broadway. Or David Mervish, get on this piece, put it in your CAA theater, and have it live there. Like, this is a piece that is perfect for Toronto, and it will pay you dividends because you will have people coming back multiple times to see it. Because even the people sitting next to us who had seen it before were talking about how, yes, they had seen certain situations, but in a different order. Yeah. So like some of the situations that stood out, one was the cannibal lover. That was one that
that was our first scene. Yeah,
that was our first one. That was basically like kind of a cell block tango-esque inspired, like Sandra Dee style number from Greece, where it's all the women in their like nightgowns, so having like a sleepover, talking about their love lives. And then the next one was the
okay, we don't need to go through our whole sequence.
No. Like there's some that stood out more than others. Like Cannibal Lover was one that stood out. The Immortal Magic Genie Lamp was one that definitely stood out, because just the whole concept of exploring, like every one of these turns just starts off a bit funny, but then most of them, not all of them, some of them stayed kind of funny. Like the whole zombie apocalypse one kind of stayed funny throughout the piece. But there sort of was that really sunk in and had a deeper message to them. Like Cannibal Lover was just funny. That was just a funny piece. But you have the Immortal one with the magic lamp. You have the one that really moved everybody. Like there were multiple sniffles in the audience for this one. And that was the one, like, what will happen next?
Yeah.
And that should be a song that he released as a single now to promote the show so people can get into it. Because the minute that sequence started, the girl next to me got excited. Like she was like, yes, like this is the one I wanted them to do. And the fact, and the only thing I will ding the production on is 2 small things. One is when you chose an object, you could, because we were at the back, you couldn't quite, like some of the bigger objects, like a gas can.
Yeah.
You could easily understand what it was.
Sorry, did you clarify to people listening to this who didn't see the show that the front row of the audience is invited to pick specific objects?
Yes, the front row, yes.
And then that dictates which scenes are done in what order.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. But they kind of group the objects, so it's kind of like, hey, pick something from this grouping. So that kind of helps the actors on stage kind of get themselves ready in such a way where they kind of can grab props and prep who's ever going to play Iris in that moment. They can easily kind of get to and kind of know, okay, in this grouping, these are the ones that are potentially going to be covered. Yeah, I mean, some of the scenarios were kind of there, like the whole freezing to death in the snowstorm. One was the one that really kind of didn't do much for me. That was kind of the weakest one I felt out of our 8. But yeah, what will happen next? Oh my God. That one number broke me. Like absolutely had me the sniffles, the tears in the eyes. The tear didn't run, but it was there. Like it was getting me really
Mine ran. Good. Yeah, I felt it. That was damn good.
Right?
Song.
Yeah, like it's so good. And yeah, I mean, and even watching some of the social media stuff, like they talk about one where she gets hit in the head by a rogue baseball. We never saw that one. That was what
No.
we didn't see, but there's a
Yeah.
clip of it on their social media and it looked funny. But yeah, like every one of them had something to it that was unique and fun. And then the ending just hit home with the message. And I won't spoil what the ending is because I'm hoping the show has longer life, but it kind of is a bit like the ending of The Good Place.
Yeah.
Which once again, a great inspiration to take. That's a fantastic show. That's a lot that gives you a lot of good material there. But yeah, I mean, this was just such a good piece that is by far being the standard of this fringe and will probably stick with me through future fringes as well. And God, by God, Mervish, get on this show. This is your next big hit that will take you places. I full on believe this could be it. I can easily see Lisa Horner playing an Iris. Like that's someone who
Which
I
one?
See. Hmm?
Which one?
The main one, the one that dies at the beginning.
Okay, who was played by Michelle Blight, who did a very good job.
She did a great job. I could easily see like anybody could play Iris, and then you have other people play living Iris in those different scenarios. Like this was just this is a piece that you could easily swap actresses out for playing Iris, and it could go for years. This is a piece that could give and give and give. Mervish, like get on this. Don't reproduce Lion King again. May it bless you, Lion King. But like
it's closing soon.
It's closing soon. But like this is a piece of Canadian theater, a Canadian musical that has the chance to go the distance. Ryan, I've talked a lot.
Yeah.
And you said before we started you had some caveats with this one.
Yeah, like I loved it. I did love it. I don't want anything I'm about to say to kind of, but like I loved it with asterisks, unfortunately. Okay. And first thing I'll say, and this doesn't feel fair, but I don't think I loved it as much as I loved Killing Time. And because
this was a slower burn, because I would agree with you. Killing Time caught me right away.
They're very different types of shows. And like to try to compare them just by the fact that Margot Grieve and Ben Kopp wrote both of them feels like it's the only common denominator, and some of the cast members, of course. But otherwise, like, yeah, these are completely different shows to say like, oh, it's a different. Killing Time is like a very arch comedy, very focused in what it's doing. It has a clear narrative trajectory. And this is complicating the idea of a narrative trajectory in a way that, again, apples and oranges of what these pieces are doing. Okay. I'm trying to think of what order I want to say these points in. I don't necessarily know if I'm completely sold on what is essentially the central premise of this piece, which feels weird to say when I did indeed love it.
Okay.
But this idea of the variability. And like, okay, so did you see Hayley McGee's solo show, Ages of Feeling, which is a piece that I'm sure I'm not going to be the only one to compare this to?
No, I hadn't seen that one.
Yeah, so that's a piece by Hayley McGee that uses a very similar device of letting the audience choose envelopes that have parts of the life story that this character is telling. And the thematic center is like, I'm telling you parts of my life that is randomized every night, but you don't get to hear the whole story. And so much of life is the parts you don't hear about just as much as it is the parts you do. But there's also another show that we'll talk about in a later part of this roundup. That's at this year's Fringe. One of the next stage shows, Have Fun Kids, that uses another very similar device in a similar way. So we're having a moment of these kind of variable, choose your own adventure, course of a life kind of stories. This one feels different than those other two for a very important reason. And that's because there's no continuity between these stories. That each one of them is a hypothetical multiverse life that Iris could live
if she chooses that life.
If she chooses to reincarnate. But none of these are the same Iris. Like there is like even though little individual like threads and characters maybe pop up between them, there's
like Jane the Lover.
Yeah, Jane the Lover, or
her sister.
The sister and the other lover guy who was a central figure in the What Will Happen Next story, and then he comes back in the party one that we saw.
Dan, I think it's Dan.
I don't think it was Dan, but whatever, that guy.
Yeah. That guy, yes.
Yeah, like, so while there are like nuggets that you can kind of track, like, oh yeah, that feels like a reference to that other thing from the Iris we see with her cannibal boyfriend is not the same Iris that we see in the fighting future zombie apocalypse, whatever.
In 2090?
2090 was that story, and it's not the same Iris that we see in What Will Happen Next, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So,
or the birthday party bequeathal.
Yeah, well, and that's okay. Actually, or the birthday party one, which is the one we ended with, where we find out that Iris is a total jerk to everyone she knows.
Yes,
like to me that. It's also unfortunate that that's the one we ended on, like as this kind of last note, because like to me that Iris is so unlike the other irises that like to what extent do we even conceive this as the same character? And like it's kind of not. And as
it's interesting because in one of the social media posts, they had a different name for this piece, which hold on, let me pull it up.
Sorry, this piece as in the whole play Iris Says Goodbye,
yes.
or that scene in particular? Okay.
No, this whole show.
Okay.
Hold on. I have it here. I have it saved. 30 Ways to Say Goodbye.
30 Ways to Say Goodbye. Interesting. Okay, that doesn't change the point that I'm making.
That was the name of the show in 2023. And then later in 2023, it then became Iris Says Goodbye.
Okay. Okay, sure. It had a different title at one point.
But I think the different title ties more into what you're saying, where they all didn't connect back to Iris, because it was 30 different scenario or 20 multiple different scenarios of different deaths, basically.
I think what I'm getting at with this is that this piece, by its very design, I think lacks a character arc or an emotional.
But that's kind of like Bobby and Company,
which I also don't like. Well, I
yes, that's
dislike
true.
that more.
I was going to say another musical you're not a big fan of.
Well, but this even more so than that, because at least Company, same order of scenes anytime you see it. True. And whether or not I like it, I don't. Sorry, Sondheim people. But I think it's just
let your pitchforks, get your torches.
It's just honestly, Company's the most boring play I've ever seen, in my opinion. Come at me. But
I love Company, people.
I know you do. Okay. But this, by virtue, cannot have an emotional arc, because we are seeing all of these different people who are essentially different characters, who are just all people Iris could be, but none of them are who she is. And the fact that it's constantly in a different order and not even the same scenes each time means that there is no way for them to actually connect and build off of each other in any meaningful way. It's not an arc, it's a scatter plot of just here's some stuff.
It's a concept musical.
Yeah, and I guess that's not my favorite kind of musical. But this is why. Like, it's not just an undue prejudice. I'm just like, it's not connecting anything in a meaningful way. That to me, like, feels like it robs so much. The fact that, like, the one song that did really get me was What Will Happen Next. That hit my soul. And the fact that some people won't see it, or they'll see it in like a less opportune time in the show, it just like feels like a waste of such a perfect piece of writing that they've created.
That would be the one Plant song I would wish it to be the final.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how they could do it, but a way that they could make that be the final song, so then it ties in with what happens to Iris at the end. Which, can we spoil what happens to her at the end, Ryan?
Can we put a pin in that, because I have more things I want to get to before, because we're getting there. In the version of the performance we saw, like, Sydney Govin sang the hell out of that song. And it's the only version of those three other Irises that we saw. We had a very Maddie Hodges focused performance, just by
which was a lot of fun.
Yeah, she's great. Like, all three of the other Irises were great. But like, just the fact that, like, yeah, like, it's, I don't know, like, I feel like I think it's part of the point, but it's a point I don't like, I guess. And like, and that's fine. You liked it more than I like the show overall. I like what it's doing. There's so much good pieces in it that, like, it's hard to dislike any of it. But here's also the other thing that, I guess, while we're on the subject of these three different Irises who play out the scenarios here, why do we have three different Irises for this, I guess, is what I wonder.
I asked myself the same question.
Did you come to a conclusion?
I think for me, what it was, or at least the way I justified it, was that basically, like, the Iris that we're seeing is just meant to be a filler placeholder for dead Iris that is ultimately going to go take that person's spot. They're not meant to be a actual Iris. They're kind of just a filler body for that moment in time. And it's just, that's who gets created to be that one. Now, I think you easily could redo this show and have only one Iris. I definitely think there is a way you could do that, but it'd be really tricky depending on what type of Iris you're going for. Like, Maddie's Iris did a lot more of the zany, physical, heavier pieces compared to Sydney's Iris. And obviously, yes, she had recently had an accident, and that's why she was using a wheelchair during this performance. But like, her Iris is very different.
Well, we don't know what her Iris is. We saw one song of her.
True.
It was the most heart-rending song of the entire show.
And then there was our third Iris, kind of plays the more douchey, kind of middle ground Iris, I guess, who can do a bit of the zany, but then also have some really beautiful vocals. Like I
Uh-huh.
have some really the whole Bequeathal song is really well done
Mhm.
as well.
Yeah, like it's all well done. Like I'm not
Yeah,
saying again, I wanted to preface like I
yeah.
like the show.
But I definitely could see a version where Iris is played by one
Well, yeah,
secondary body
like
versus three.
I
I do
think
think it's an interesting concept to have three different irises. I do think that's an interesting, just kind of, they're meant to fill the void
so.
of irises will be you.
Like here's the thing, like I feel like the show wants to be Wild Strawberries but wound up being the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus. Do either of those references track? Does
Yes,
anybody know these movies? Do they?
yes, Heath Ledger's last movie.
Yeah, so like famously Heath Ledger, when he
Mhm.
died in the middle of a Terry Gilliam movie, the
Yeah.
Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus, they did this weird thing where like all of his scenes like in the present day were played by him, so they shot all
Mhm.
that stuff first, and then the scenes that take place in this fantasy land,
Mhm.
three of his like actor friends as a tribute to
Yeah.
him play these other
Johnny Depp
roles.
was one of them, wasn't he?
Johnny Depp, Jude Law, and Matt Damon, was it? I could be
I
wrong
think
about
so.
that. But yeah, so three people who were personal friends with Heath Ledger like did
Came
this
in to
to
finish
like,
the project.
and like that the movie's bad. Like it
Yes.
doesn't work.
It's not one
But
that I've gone back to. I watched
no,
it once.
yeah, so did I. But it's you understand that watching it as something out of necessity. That if they
Yes.
had made the movie they wanted to make, Heath Ledger wouldn't have died and he would have played all of those roles.
Yeah.
This feels like it's making the same bizarre choice but without the necessity. Like, why do we have these? Like, circumstances demanded that movie to be that way. This one is just like, yeah, it's good that we're giving like three very talented performers this role, but why I say I think I want it to be Wild Strawberries instead, which is the Ingmar Bergman film, which popularized the interpretation of a character revisiting their past, but it's still like the old man version of him showing up in these like childhood flashbacks. Like I feel like this would be more powerful and more poignant if it was the same Iris all the way through, that if we actually see her not just being this outside observer of these are the lives I could choose, but like briefly living them and thinking about like, is this something I want to live and relive over and over again? Yeah, like I guess I don't know. Like I think there's a lot of interesting choices here that like allow them to have this like very big, very talented cast and give roles to all these people. But I'm left with questions that kind of take away from the main thing. I do want to talk a bit about, like I've already kind of said a lot of these scripts. You wanted to talk about the very ending, and I have thoughts about that too. But what did you want to say about it?
I mean, for me, like, I think having what will happen next as your final number before Iris makes her decision
Mhm.
would work better than having it randomized at the very end. Like, because that really is the star number of this
Mhm.
piece. Like, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of other fun numbers in this
And maybe
show.
there's other star numbers we didn't hear, but of what we
Right,
saw, the
right.
eight
I
that
mean,
was the standout.
I mean, I think the Immortal song and what will happen next are the two kind of emotional anchors we saw out of the 8
Mm-hmm.
that
Sure.
could be considered an ending, kind of like, these are all your 8 variations and this is the last one we want to leave you with. Like, there needs to be a grouping of objects that's like, hey, this is going to be number 8 and any one of these could be a big emotional punch ending.
Well,
Could be any of them, and that's
well,
kind of the trick of the game is you stack that final one where you know it's going to be the emotional punch. The audience won't know that,
well,
but
and
the actors will know this is the emotional punch.
here's the thing about that. Michelle's Iris decides that she wants to take a little bit of agency at the end. So for the very last number, picks up 2 items.
Right.
And like it seems like this is trying to steer it towards we want to end with a specific number or
Right,
one of
because
these
she has
two.
the birthday hat and I don't know what
In the
other
Hot
object
Wheels
was.
car, and we got
Hot
the
Wheels
birthday
car.
hat. And I heard, like leaving the theater, people like talking, comparing notes, people who saw it multiple times, that those 2 items weren't like like it would make sense if that was always like we want to end
Right.
on a specific song or 2, so
Right.
we'll do this. But listening to people like, no, it was completely different items. We saw that party song earlier in the play. Like
yes,
in the version,
I remember I heard that as well.
And like the party song, I didn't care for that one very much. And
that one didn't do much for me either. Like it was very similar to the gasoline art.
Oh yeah.
The art the kind of Sunday in the Park with George.
Yeah.
Art of making art. Art is an easy style song.
Yeah, I got So I think
Where it's
like
kind of like artist person is a bit of a curmudgeon to work with, and ergo they're a dick. I
yeah.
guess kind of similar, but it's not the one I would have ended on. Like if you have that type of control that you can pick up a genie lamp, and what was the one? Like what was the object that sparked? What will happen next? What's it? A
It was the
wedding ring?
wedding ring. Yeah,
Okay, so like that, like you pick up those two key objects and go pick one.
yeah. And like I that
Because I
would.
think the concept of immortality and what does that mean,
Mhm.
and then compared to a person trying to live up to what will happen next in their life story. It ultimately be cut down by illness at the end. I think is really two great ending pieces that ultimately would then prompt Iris to make the choice of, I'm not going back. I
Yeah.
actively choose to pull an Eleanor and walk through the door.
Well, and the thing that this sort of gets me, like why I say it's not a character arc,
Mhm.
is because she's going to make that decision regardless of which sequence of stories we see.
True.
There is literally no stimulus from the sampling of 8 that we get that's
Mhm.
going to change the outcome, as far as I can understand it. That
Right.
doesn't seem like that's actually part of the built-in variability of this show.
Mhm.
So, and like that closing number, the one that isn't contingent on there, but where she does sing about that decision to go
Mhm.
through the door, that's like a good culmination of what could have
Yes.
been an arc. But because it's not pulling from any sort of specificity, because she's
Mhm.
presumably going to sing that regardless of which sequence is seen, it
Right.
just feels like it's it's a non-arc. I called it a scatter plot before, because that's
Mhm.
basically what it is. It's a predetermined ending that the journey is completely immaterial towards arriving
Mhm.
us at. And to me, there's something about that that rubs me the wrong way just a little bit, as much as the pieces of it are all fantastic. And it really hit. And if it's like something where they do retool it, where every production or every performance of it does get at least what will happen next in there somewhere, and maybe building it towards the ending in some sort of more controlled way, could make it feel like an arc.
Yeah.
Whereas, and like, I admire the
I
experimentalism.
mean, like, what will happen next was our second last,
Yeah, by
but it
fluke.
was our 11 o'clock number. Yeah, but yeah. I mean, like, that's the other one. That's the other thing I wanted to ding the production on just a little bit was they had that call board,
Mhm.
but they needed its own spotlight that really highlighted what those picks were and with the titles. Because sitting in the back row, like there were times I couldn't read what it said or like,
Hmm.
and so that kind of frustrated me because I'm like squinting trying to be like, okay, what is it? Like, give me a moment to actually read the board so I can see what's going on, and then also find a way to really identify the art. I guess somebody like the fact I didn't know it was a wedding ring
Mhm.
that was picked up to spark,
But
uh,
there's the icons on the
but
board
but
that.
it's hard to read that sign
Okay,
because
I
it's
didn't
not
have any
well
problem
lit.
reading it, and I was sitting right next to. Okay, I know that's not something that bothered me, because
Yeah,
it's also because the sign is there the whole time. You can
yeah,
glance at it at your leisure, look at
yeah,
it for as long as you want.
yeah.
Yeah, to me, I didn't even really notice that it wasn't particularly well lit.
It must be a sign that my nearsightedness is getting
Maybe go to
worse.
the eye doctor.
I
So,
must go to the eye doctor.
all right. Any last thoughts about Iris before we spit adieu to this
Give
part
me a
one?
cast recording. Murdish,
Yes,
pick this show up.
I'm still
Let's
listening to the
go.
Killing Time cast recording all
I
these years
listened to
later.
it on Sunday after seeing Iris. Like
Yeah.
I had some minutes in the afternoon to listen to it on my Uber over to the next theater.
And if they do a cast recording, like, it will by necessity have to contain all of the songs, which to me kind of feels like it does violence to the dramaturgy that they're trying to go for, where the point is that you don't get all the stories.
But the
But
fact that you don't, the fact you wouldn't even understand all of them without seeing the full scenario, because sometimes the song is like doesn't quite fit naturally, like to tell everything that's going on until they're on like the numb one. Like that's why the numb one didn't quite work for me was
mm,
because I was left going, okay, what are we building to with this one? Like I kind of
yeah,
didn't quite have a build
we're
to it compared to
building
like,
towards Iris's death, as they all are.
well, yeah,
Yeah.
but like, trying to figure out how does numb fit into this.
Hmm.
Kind of felt like a last minute thing. Okay, we got to kill her off, so let's have her die in the snow.
Yeah, I
Compared
don't
to
know.
like 2090, which right away set up post-apocalyptic world, and she's surviving until she isn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Immortality one set up very quickly what the premise of that scenario was.
Hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, but
Anyway,
like I want all 20. Like give me all 20 songs.
honestly, if I had the album, I would probably just keep listening to What Will Happen Next over and over again, as I often do with musical cast
Yes.
albums. The one song that grabs me is
Yeah.
just my go-to repeat
Yeah.
listening until I eventually hate music.
There we go. But no, this was a solid piece. Like I'm shocked Hamilton Fringe doesn't have it on their docket.
Well,
because like this would be a
it's a
perfect
lottery.
jump point.
Yeah, it's a lottery.
Yeah. Yeah.
Although the reason they got their guaranteed spot in Toronto Fringe is because they won the the Adams Prize. Yeah,
Oh,
Adams
okay.
Prize for best musical, like from a contest, which secured them a spot. Which is how when in January when we did that episode, and I
You
already
knew
knew
it
that
was
this was
coming.
gonna be But yeah.
Got it. Well, no,
Anyway,
yeah, this was a great piece.
it was.
I loved it.
And
We've talked about this piece for almost
much
31
longer.
minutes.
31 minutes on just this. Jeez.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So definitely long enough.
Let's wrap this up.
Let's wrap this up. It's late. Like Ryan's kept me way past my bedtime, but it's well worth it to talk about.
You kept you past your bedtime. You didn't have to talk about Iris for as long as you did.
I know. I just loved it so much. Ryan.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good show.
Yeah. Well done, mixtape projects. But that being said, this was the end of part 1. We still have 2 more parts, at least.
Hopefully.
2.
Yeah. We got through everything we wanted to in this one, so we should be able to knock off the others in only 2.
I think so. As long as you and Jill stick tight to your episode and don't bleed over too much, you guys should be okay. But there we go. We will see everybody in our next episode. Before we go, though, Ryan, give us that classic Ryan Borochovitz send-off we all know.
Yeah, no point trying to find and follow me personally, but if you like me and my theater thoughts, they tend to live here on the Cup. That's at COH Theater on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Cup of Hemlock Theater on YouTube. Cup of Hemlock Theater podcast, and all the podcast places where you might be listening to this. I also published some Fringe reviews in Next, 4 of them that should be existing online by the time this goes live after the festival. And I published an article about Fringe Clowns and Intermission if you want to read about Fringe Clowns. How about you, Mac? Where can people find and follow you?
Follow me at Mackenzie on all social media platforms. Follow my musical theater antics over at Before the Downbeat, a musical podcast where mixtape. If you ever want to come on and talk some musicals, come on over. Happy to have you.
Have you done a company episode yet?
Yes. That was done in season 1 because that's one of Autumn's favorite musicals.
Okay.
I have my own screenplay of how I would do Company as a movie. That has lived in my head for years, Ryan. And I think you would like my film version more than the stage show because
it's only uphill from here, honestly.
Here we go. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Stay healthy, stay safe, and we will see you all in part 2.
Cheers.
Cheers.